We from the Tamil Heritage Trust are extremely happy to invite all of you to the latest edition of our Indology Festival. As most of you are aware, this is an annual online event conducted by THT across the course of 6 days. 12 eminent speakers, authorities of their research and scholarship, talk about various aspects of a topic which not only has reference to Indology, Indian history and heritage, but is also relevant and topical currently. Along these lines, the topic for this year's festival is Harappan Civilization, a Century of Discovery. Not all of you may be aware of the fact that the world at large came to know about the existence of the Indus Valley Civilization only about a century back. It was on 20th September 1924 that the world came to know about this. The first two sites that were excavated were the cities of Harappa and Mohenjo-daro, spread apart by about 400 miles. It wouldn't be an exaggeration to say that the extent of these excavations and the remarkable discoveries of day-to-day objects, coins, seals, remnants of buildings, in fact, entire cities, completely revolutionized the existing ideas about the age and origin of human civilization in general and Indian civilization in particular. In fact, whatever we understood about the development of human settlements across the globe was rewritten on that day, and the history of human race on this earth has not been the same since then. Over the last 100 years, 1,400 additional sites have been discovered, and scholars have been researching on these sites extensively. These sites are geographically located over what we may call as the modern countries of Afghanistan, Pakistan, and India. Scholars have also dated this settlement to have existed between 3300 BC to 1300 BC. Today, we have gathered here to celebrate the centenary of the discovery of the Harappan civilization. Through the next 6 days, 12 speakers are going to be addressing various aspects of the civilization to give us an in-depth knowledge from various points of view. In fact, we are very sure that the insightful knowledge that we are going to gain over the next 6 days is not only going to be enhancing our pride as to who we are and where we come from, but may also act as guiding principles in our future developmental endeavors. Now, before we go on to the main event, I'd like to give a brief introduction about THT and our activities, especially for all those who are joining us today for the first time. Tamil Heritage Trust or Tamil Paramparya Arakkatalai is an organization that was started almost 14 years back by a group of like-minded volunteers. The main objective of the organization is to understand, appreciate, disseminate, and celebrate various aspects of our heritage and history, not just for the erudite and the scholarly, but for the average public who may be passionately interested in these subjects. Towards this end, THT conducts several activities throughout the year. We have monthly talks, which are conducted on the first and third Saturdays. The first Saturday talk is an English online talk, while the third Saturday talk is in Tamil and is an in-person talk. We have another event which we call as the Pechu Kacheri or the Oratory Concert, celebrated in December. This is done to corroborate and coincide with the music festival that happens in Chennai at that time, the Margari Isai Kacheri. We once again curate a topic, and over 2 days, subject experts discuss this topic from various angles. They are often joined by THT volunteers. We try to make up for our lack of expertise with our enthusiasm and interest. The third is, of course, the Indology Festival, and we are right in the midst of it now. THT also conducts several kinds of workshops. We have daily workshop, one-day workshops, which are called How to See a Temple or How to See a Museum, etc. In the forenoon session, we have certain lectures. And then in the afternoon session, we have a practical site visit where the participants are taken to the actual site to elucidate about what we discussed in the previous session. On and off, we also have classes on Grantham, ancient astronomy, Indian mathematics, etc. Then another event which we undertake annually is called the Site Seminar. Now, this is largely an in-house event meant for our own development and enhancement. We once again zero in on a particular site in India, and our volunteers, over a period of 3 to 4 months, study various aspects of the site extensively and have in-house seminars. Then, armed with all this knowledge, we visit those sites and try to experience it in a wholehearted manner. Coming back, we also try to document what we have studied there, and our endeavor has been to convert it into a book, but alas, all our books are still in their manuscript stage only. Another event that we have is called Alamar Away, which is basically aimed for the school teachers of Tamil Nadu. Over a series of weekend lectures, we both disseminate and interact with the school teachers, the idea being that they go and further spread among their students awareness about Indian history and heritage. THT has also constituted 2 awards for individual contribution in these fields. The first award is called the Professor Swaminathan Heritage Award, named after one of our co-founders. We are into the 5th year of this award. The second award is called the V. Venkaiah Epigraphy Award and is constituted jointly by THT and the daughter of Mr. Venkaiah, who was the first known epigraphist of India. We also have a dedicated YouTube channel where you can find links to all our past talks. You can subscribe there and click the bell icon to get notifications of all our future events. We have a regular website, and these are our social media handles. If you want to be included in our mailing list, you may kindly mail us at this address. As I already told you, we are a voluntary organization and do not have any dedicated financial backing. So any kind of contributions from anybody is welcome, and you may do so at this barcode or this address. That in a nutshell is about THT. Now moving on to today's event, we have 2 interesting talks lined up for you. Our first talk is the inaugural address, Dholavira, the city that defines and adds new dimensions to Harappan civilization, delivered by the eminent Dr. Bisht, the man who led the excavation at Dholavira. In his talk, Dr. Bisht will be looking at Dholavira from various angles, including its principles of planning and architecture, and how the discovery of Dholavira added an entire new dimension to our understanding of the Indus civilization. Dr. Bisht is a Padma Shri awardee, a leading archaeologist and a scholar. He started his career at the Department of Archaeology and Museum, Punjab, and retired as the Joint Director General of ASI in 2004. Apart from Dholavira, Mr. Bisht also led excavations at Banawali in Hisar district of Haryana, Saint Tan in Pulwama district of Jammu and Kashmir, Chechal in Vaishali district, Sarai Mound in Nalanda district of Bihar, and Sanghol in Ludhiana district of Punjab. Other than teaching and designing several training programs, both in India and abroad, Dr. Bisht has also been responsible for setting up and maintenance of several museums across the country. He is also actively involved in the conservation of Indian monuments of national importance. One such project is the 11 monuments in Narnaul, which is the location of one of the first battles of Indian rebellion of 1857. Without further ado, I call upon Dr. Bisht to take the center stage or screen as the case may be and tell us all the interesting details about Dholavira. Shall I stop share now?
Invite kar diya. Hello, can you hear me?
Yes,
Am
sir.
I audible?
Yes,
Yeah.
we can hear you.
Vanakkam, Dr. Gauri, for giving a very long introduction to the activities of the Tamil Heritage Trust, which is very, I'm very happy that you have diversified the topics. You are not just confining to one single thing, but the entire past of the humankind. So for that purpose, I am very grateful to the Tamil Heritage Trust for inviting me to give this lecture. And Vadakkam to Dr. Gauri, Vadakkam to Dr. Badri Sheshadri, and Vadakkam to Kishore Mahadevan. Thank you. So now I start.
Sir, you can bring up your presentation.
Yeah, I am doing.
Okay. Yes. Yes, it has come. You can go to the full screen mode. Perfect, sir.
Yeah.
It's wonderful. Yeah.
Okay.
Over to you.
Okay. Dr. Gauri had already given the title of my talk of this evening, Dholavira, the city that defines and adds new dimensions to the Harappan civilization. As we know, the Harappan civilization, one of the four great urban civilizations of the third millennium BCE in the world. First is also, of course, Egyptian and Mesopotamian, Indus civilization, and Chinese civilization. Although Chinese appear a bit later, this is the physical geography of the area. Yeah. Harappan civilization was not an isolated phenomenon. Its roots lie in a long cultural sequence which started somewhere 8th millennium BCE. And during when the man was settling down, living in mud brick houses, he started domestication of animals and domestication of plants, cereals. But even then, pottery was not known to them, nor any metals were known to them. That's why we call it a ceramic Neolithic. Later on, 1000 later, they started the developing technique of making pottery. And third stage is very important because that is the beginning of copper age. For the first time, copper technology was known. Not only copper tools, but technology also was seen. And then there are various periods through which things are evolving slowly and slowly and slowly. And in the turn of the third millennium BCE, something interesting happened. That the people have started. Till then, they were the village economy. Now, around 3000 BCE plus minus 100 years, they entered town economy phase. For the first time, we find the fortification were made and town planning, norms of town planning were evolving, and so many other things were there, as seals were there, some initial things in writing, though full-fledged writing was yet to come. So then comes the full-blown urban civilization, that is Harappan civilization. So Harappan civilization was a culmination of a long cultural process that started in the 8th millennium BCE. Yeah. Harappan civilization distinguished by a long life, around 2500 BC to 1900 BC, although some archaeologists of late have started pushing it back to 2600 BCE and terminated around 2000 BCE. But the general consensus is that surely it was flourishing in 2500 BCE to 2000 BCE. That was the classical Harappan phase of the Harappan civilization. After that comes the late Harappan. It covered a very vast territory of about 0.7 million square meters. That is 7 lakh square meter area from short of Indus Yamuna river to the Makran coast in the west, and from the Shivalik foothills down to the sea, or covering even part of Gujarat, entire Kachchh and part of Gujarat. So this is the culture sequence I was talking about. There are certain notable things about the urban civilization, and some of these features make it stand apart from the civilization of Mesopotamia and Egypt in many ways. First, attaining a high degree of sophistication, and then amazing formalism in all creations, and the standardization and utilitarianism. Sometimes people say that the egalitarian society. Well, utilitarian, even whatever they created, it has some utility. They didn't waste their wealth in making very huge structures like Egyptians or big ziggurats in Mesopotamia, and all these things. That's why we have not yet found any religious place at any Harappan site. All these attributes are well manifested all phases of life, such as standardization, sophistication, utilitarianism, whether it was exquisite settlement planning, that is town planning, monumental buildings, impressive architecture, simple but very impressive, water structures and sanitation. Water structures, the best example of sanitary drainage system is Mohenjo-daro. And Mohenjo-daro also known for the introduction of well for the first time. Well, almost in every household of Mohenjo-daro. This was a significant contribution of Harappan civilization to humanity. And so far, the management of water, management of what hydraulic engineering is concerned, a very dock of Lothal is very good example of that. Harappa, Dholavira in itself reveals a new dimension and new aspect of that. And then are the special things are stamp seals, and then the script, weights and measures, pottery, and their art in different mediums, and the implements in different mediums, and games and gaming pieces. Oh, sorry. It is furthermore remarkable, as I have written, the phenomenal growth and prosperity, close cultural uniformity, mass production of crafts, complex trade mechanism, including long-distance trade, both maritime and overland. Because we know that Harappans had developed contacts with Mesopotamia and Elam. And Harappan traders were going there to trade with them instead of their coming to this area to trade with us. Thus, just a reverse happened in the Roman period. But Harappans contacted them through land routes, but mostly from maritime routes. The intercultural contacts and both international and domestic, and their funerary architecture. Sorry. Now coming to Dholavira, its location at the moment is very, very enigmatic. It is in an island of Khadir, situated in the middle of the great run of Kachch, at, which was longest and widest here, and somewhere in the center position is occupied by Khadir Island, where Dholavira is situated. The run, when it is full of water during this during the summer period, and thereafter the water evaporates and dries up, and a thick crust of salt is found spreading all around. Coming back to the Dholavira, here we have found 7 very significant cultural stages, and in that we have found some seismic events also, some earthquake episodes also. During stage 1, during stage 1 begins around 3000 BCE. That is, we see here the town economy. It was a small fortress. In stage 2, it started expanding towards the north. In stage 3A, actually stage 3 is very, very creative, very, very important cultural stage before the emergence of classical Harappans, because in stage 3 we find along with fortification and all that, highly developed town planning, which was inherited by the Harappans, as they did at many places, not only at Dholavira, but many places. They have borrowed, but at the same time, they created their own things. They put their stamp or whatever they created. And the stage 4 is the full-fledged Harappan culture, where all kinds of Harappan things are found. Seals are found, the typical classical pottery is there, writing is there, weights were there, and all whichever go with the Harappan. And stage 5 is very interesting in the sense that during this period, we see the decline in the civilization that occurred not only at Dholavira, it occurred all other major Harappan sites, all urban sites of the Harappans, a phase of decline. And then at Dholavira, there is a hiatus caused by the decline phase comes to an end suddenly because of an earthquake, severe earthquake that caused extensive damages to the monuments. But Harappans were smart enough, very financially, very strong. They repaired everything. No. I'm talking about the earlier. Here, this earthquake, the last but one earthquake that shook the entire settlement, is responsible for the end of the classical Harappan culture. And then there's some hiatus, some gap of about 70, 80 years, and then we find the appearance of the late Harappans. Late Harappans, why we call it? Because many of the classical Harappan things are still in the cultural assemblies of the late Harappans, and here something new were also coming into, and the kind of planning the Harappas says 3 people introduced, and the kind of the towns of the Harappans maintained, but they diverted it from that. We see, but we see, I mean, there was a lack of strong municipal regulations so far planning and architecture is concerned. And then again, there is a gap of cultural gap, and at last come the later Harappan phase. That is the final phase of final desertion, and that is the phase when all the urban attributes of Harappan civilization simply disappear. And here, I mean, just like very in a pictorial way, I'm telling you about the Dholavira. Yeah, this was one of the two very key tenses where we saw the all seven cultural stages in the mound of castle. Actually, Harappan, full-fledged Harappan city was tripartite, having three divisions, principal divisions, and all well within the outer fortification. That is a novel introduction in the Harappan planning. All other places we have not seen the outer fortification, including the uh, all divisions of the Harappans. And each division, except in the lower town, each division has its own fortification system. And all fortifications, all those fortifications which found there are very neatly integrated into each other. Well, it is well known that Dholavira is one of the largest urban cities in the subcontinent. Our 13 seasons of exhibition had brought to light a magnificent Harappan city along with its appurtenances. It is remarkable, as I have already told you, a long stratified cultural sequence documents the rise and fall of the Harappan civilization, exquisite urban planning with mathematical precision, telling us a lot about their arithmetic and their geometry. Monumental architecture and some aesthetic element in architecture, two multi-purpose grounds inter area as stadiums. But we know that there is an open space between the citadel and lower town at Mohenjo-daro. There is enough open space at Harappa also. There is space between the citadel and lower town at Kalibanga. But those areas were not investigated nicely by the excavators so far. For the first time, Dholavira revealed that that vacant area between the two major divisions of the Harappan was multi-purpose ground, which was used. Our exhibition shows that it was used for entertainment activities, for military parades, and for at last turning into each year, lasting turning into a market area where the merchants from different parts of Harappan territory uh, and were coming to exchange their wares. And in addition to the long one, that is 283 meters long, very, very long, and 45 to 47 meter in width. In addition to that, there is a smaller one, a smaller that is also fortified. These two grounds are also had their own fortification also. And then efficient water management and engineering, as I hinted. unique funerary monuments, and contemporary stone quarries from where the stone fine quality limestone was obtained, and the signboard inscription, the inscription having 10 signs uh, inlaid on a wooden board. Looking at this width of that signboard and looking at the width of the north gate, in one of the chambers of north gate, the inscription was found unequal door sills as well as the width of the inscription, signboard are the same, possibly very strongly suggesting that the signboard where once upon a time was spotted on the facade of the north gate, which is the most elaborate, most large gate at Dholavira. In addition to, there are many other gates also I will tell you about. This is and those multipurpose grounds, particularly the long one, has stands for seating the spectators, just the way our modern stadiums do. Our modern stadiums are circular or oval in shape, but these are rectangular. And the signboard is yeah. In addition to that, we have found a lintel excavation on stone lintel. Only a part was found by us. The other parts are not could not be recovered. It seems that they have been built into other buildings as in the late Harappan times as the building material. But the stone inscription also unique, just like the signboard inscription. And I should say, the largest stone image possibly of a divinity. And then Dholavira also tells us about the evolution of seals. And it was a great center for copper working, bead making, shell industry, stone working. And naturally, we collected a very rich harvest of antiquities, including pottery, enormous amount of pottery and all other things. This was one of our key trenches where we saw the evolution of fortification wall. During stage 1, the basal width of the fortification wall was 11.10 meters. And in stage 2, 2.5-meter brickwork were added onto it from the inner side, not outside. And it was very nicely plastered over with colored clays, which are locally available. And in stage 3B, because during stage 3A, the entire settlement jolted with, considerably destroyed by the strong earthquake. As a result of that, a large chunk of the fortification wall collapsed. But since they were financially strong enough, they quickly rebuilt them. So, but it's important to see that all 7 cultural stages have been found in the citadel mound only. This is a cross section. I'm not going to showing up the different phases of addition, this and that, the scar of earthquake, slip caused by the earthquake, and all those things. It is become very technical. I will skip it. This is the image taken by 27th April from the satellite 1D of India. And here you can see this, some white lines showing our excavated areas. We planned our excavation in a way that so that all salient features of the town planning, which is a very large area covering 50 hectares, in which three parts, as I told you, it is tripartite settlement, citadel with two fortified areas joined together, and then open space, the multi-purpose ground, and to the further north is the middle town, and middle town came into existence in stage 3A. And to the east of it, the lower town, which came in existence in period 2B. And Harappans just inherited all those things as a bequest, and they maintained it very nicely all throughout. This is the this is citadel having two parts. The squarish part is a citadel castle, and the other part is we have called bailey. We had borrowed this term from the British fortification system of the medieval times. And then is the E stands for the multi-purpose ground. E and smaller one is here, multi-purpose ground, that is stadium. And to the north of it is middle town area. And further east to it lies the remains of lower town. And lower town comes in existence in stage 3B. Say after those devastating earthquake. So it's a very interesting story. How the whole town, the whole city evolved through stages. And then all around is the outer fortification wall, and inside the fortification wall and around the built up area, you see some segmented areas. They are reservoirs. Dholavira is unique for these water reservoirs because we are dealing with the Harappans were facing an arid situation there. Not as that arid, maybe during 3rd millennium BC, when Harappan culture was flourishing, it was not that arid, but even then it was arid comparatively to Indus Valley. So that's why they selected a piece of land where two torrents, monsoon torrents, run one on the north, that is called Mansar, and one to the south. And these two monsoon channels enclose the Harappan settlement because they had the planning to create so many reservoirs all around by damming these monsoon channels and conducting water into cascading series of reservoirs. It is here we have shown some two diagonal lines. One from the northeast to southwest, and that touches the northwestern corner of citadel, and the other fourth corner has not been found. So we divided the angle of the uh, northwestern corner into two equal halves, and, interestingly, that line cut across this northwestern corner of the middle town also, and then touches the northeastern corner of the citadel. So you can see that how the whole thing involves lot of arithmetic and lot of uh, geometry. Geometry, there were no, they did not have, may not have very sophisticated instruments of survey as we have today. But even then, the remarkable ratio and proportion they maintain over an undulating area is remarkable. And that aspect, the inner length of the entire city is 771.10 meters, and the width is 616.86 meters, giving you precise ratio is 5:4. When we come to castle, its ratio proportion is also 5:4. And likewise, each division has some definitive ratio proportions. And all ratio proportions that we have obtained from there are interestingly have been found in our Sanskrit treatises written 3,000 years later. It is very surprising how the traditions, how the norms continued for such a long time, particularly when Harappan culture simply disappeared and disappeared and leaving very poor successors. These are three parts. The pinkish part, castle, and greenish part, bailey, and the light yellowish or light brown middle town, and lower town is deep brown. And then outer fortification is also shown, and torrents are shown as if uh, carrying water. Here, this is the overview of the castle. Castle, and to the west of that is Bailey, and this great ground, which I call the multi-purpose ground. It was well within the fortification that was extended for castle and enclosed it, and then went on further and enclosed defended the middle town also. The smaller one is here. Yeah, this is smaller one, and it is such a long feature, which I told you that 283 meters. That even this picture taken from the air could not have a complete picture of the length of the fortification, the multi-purpose ground. Next. Coming to the castle, we are seeing the north gate, which is most elaborate, most sumptuous, having two chambers. And in one of the chambers, we found that famous signboard inscription. There's a distant view. It's showing the distant view of the fortification, and a platform in front of the gate. It was originally it was made 600-meter high, and here you can see some step-like things. Those are the stands. Actually, there are 5 terraces. Each terrace contains stands, step-like things for the spectators. And the series goes all around like this, all around, even along the middle town and at the western end as well as eastern end of middle town, the great gown. This is a very significant contribution. This is the closer view of the middle town, having 2 chambers. Actually, in the western chamber, this is here, western chamber, we found that signboard description, and 2 chambers. In between that is a broad passageway, 3.60 meters broad passageway, which is connected to a dog-legged staircase for giving access to the castle, north gate. Yeah, here you can see the passageway, and on either side are the chambers, broad, coffee long chambers. Everything is geometrically perfect. It is connected to staircase, and as I said that it turns a right angle like this, and at both ends, outer end as well as inner end of the passageway, we found evidence of gates, and the door leaves were made of wood because they are wear and they have caused wear and tear marks strongly on the doors of limestone. And, and this is the east gate. East gate had only one single chamber. In all, there are 4 gates in the castle giving access. Is in the east, west, north, and south. But each has its own design, not repeated. Southern one is subterranean. Subterranean means underground. Here you can see some beautiful architecture. Remember, I will show closer view of those things like this. This striped limestone columns. Different elements of the column, central column, can be easily seen here. Very nicely polished, nicely made. Everything. How on these the 2 hemispherical members will come upon this concave sided one are marked by arrow mark. How to place the upper member over the lower member clearly indicated. Possibly we see this is one model of on the right side is one model of the kind of, possibly the kind of pillar they had. Or maybe that the central column was made of wood. Yes, the closer view of that. The pilaster stones there, and in the central column, I will skip it. Yeah, this is very important. We have already seen that striped members of Dholavira written there, Dholavira. And there are many were found at Mohenjo-daro of the same limestone, striped limestone. And the same striped limestone was used at Harappa also. We have got a query here. Obviously, the technology was there. Artisans were here. They were fashioning it, and then they are exporting them to the great cities of Mohenjo-daro and Harappa. Yeah, I have already shown these things just conjecture. In the beginning, we thought about how the elements should have been placed. The two examples are given. Third example in this miniature column of shell. And the example is seen at Harappa. Here, the east element is zigzag. Again made of the fine yellow limestone. And whatever good things, stage 3 people, stage 4 people, stage 5 people did, the late Harappans were destroying them. They robbed the gates of the architectural members and put them in a lapidary workshop where beads were being made. This is the east gate giving access to the multipurpose ground, and the multipurpose ground is connected to the ramp that was giving access to the north gate. And then you have seen the other details of the north gate. Here again, you can find a chamber here. Harappans are well known for their street planning or their town planning. And when the streets are planned in a very nice way, their entire settlement is going to be very planned way. Here you can see two views of the uninterrupted arterial street running from west to east in the middle town. And you can also see how the two other streets were branching off at right angle. Very quite broad. These are two views of the same thing. And now we are coming to a lower town. Even in the lower town, the street goes straight uninterruptedly. And the streets which emanate from the branch off from the main arterial street are always staggered. And they are staggered at Mohenjo-daro and elsewhere also. One street, if north-south or east-west, is uninterruptedly running, the other streets are in a zigzag fashion. This is a very peculiar thing at Harappa also, in Mohenjo-daro also. And then we found a very big well in the castle, diameter of which is 4.125 meters. And it was nicely equipped with a trough here. And we found here such evidence that water should be about 13 plus 13, 26 meters deeper. So it was humanly difficult to draw water from here. So we found that Harappans made such an arrangement that two columns were raised diametrically across the well and fitted and horizontal bar was put and must have kept a pulley. And then leather bag was lowered to fill up the water, and the two bulls were used for drawing water because we find a driveway for the bulls. Next. And the water drawn from the well were stored in two tanks. Here you are seeing the larger one tank. Oh, smaller is not shown. Now we are coming to the east of the castle, the huge water reservoir. It is 73 meters long and 30 meters broad, giving a ratio is 1:6. And each corner of the water reservoir were equipped with a flight of steps in each corner. And at the fourth corner, we find the westware for letting the surplus water go into another tank. Because as I told you, we find a cascading series of reservoir. It is one of them. Very large one, largest. And here is a very good example of a rock cut well. It's a rock cut well. And again, it was also furnished with a flight of steps. And a part of that very obliquely made. We don't have a very satisfactory answer why a particular was made oblique to it. Maybe possibly for drawing water, from there, one from this corner, the other from this corner. That's the only plausible explanation I can offer. So I'm not showing all the reservoir. This is the eastern reservoir, and if a devastating flood that occurred in the middle of stage 5 filled all the tanks which Harappans created there with sand, with alluvium. And stage 5, sometime in the middle of stage 5, and the Harappas of stage 5, as I already told you, were declining. They didn't have financial resources to remove the debris brought by the flood and to make these things functional. So what did they do? They selected a small portion from where the sediments were removed here, and all the things which the flood had brought about were held up by this wall. And they cut a very irregular kind of well in the rock. And it was small, it is furnished with very, very small steps. I think this is the first beginning of the step wells of Gujarat, for which the entire province is so famous. As Mohenjo-daro was famous for its sanitary drainage, Dholavira is famous for its storm water drainage. A network of some storm water drains have been built in the citadel area. And to fill the series of reservoirs which Harappans created, well within the outer fortification and well between the built-up area and outer fortification, they built across the torrents, monsoonal torrents, dams. At least 3 dams were we have noticed in the Manhar channel and 1 in the Mansar channel, to store the water and to divert that water into cascading series of water reservoirs, eastern, southern as well as western. Yeah, this how here we have shown how the dam might have been raised. We have found many parallel stone walls across the channel of the Manhar, and those running perfectly parallel to each other with leaving a gap. We believe that gap was utilized for driving or putting such wooden things, because wood is a very good thing for. This is the famous signboard inscription. Each sign measures about 30 7 to 35 meters in height and 25 to 27 meters in width. And these are all Harappan letters. In all, we found 10. So some of them have been disturbed, but they were clearly visible that what they looked like. This is a unique thing. If that inlaid on a wooden board, the decayed remains of which we have found in the course of excavation. If so, the width, as I told you, the width of this signboard is equal to the width of the doorsill of the outer gate, suggesting that it was once upon a time was sported on the facade of the north gate. Yeah, I talked about the lintel, stone lintel with Harappan letters. Only part of that we found. It's a huge lintel piece, and I believe it was put up on the western gate of the castle. And it, of course, the earthquake caused its fall, which, as I see that we see the evolution of seals. The first first one was found in stage 3A. Very small, very tiny, not as big as it is seen in the slide. Very small one, but that famous mythological seal, which is depicted by many of the Harappan seals from Harappa and Mohenjo-daro. And then this central one is well-known Harappan seals, which are ubiquitously are found all over the Harappan Empire, which I call Harappania. And the third, the last one, is the late Harappan seals. We have collected many late Harappan seals, but none of them carry any image, carry no images of animals or plants or mycological seals or sacred symbols, nothing. Only inscriptions are there, and they are also rectangular. On the rectangular face of the seal, those legends are engraved, and the shape of this great Harappan is totally different from the classical Harappan seals. They are the late Harappan one are plano-convex. All these plano-convex seals, you can see how on the back side is raised with a perforation in the center, and the one like this. So no, only inscription, no motifs. So it shows an ideological change in the late Harappan times. Late Harappan times is that during which many of the classical Harappan elements in pottery, in design, in painting, and in script, in weights and shirt blades and other things the Harappan use are continuing. And in addition to those, some exotic material was coming during stage 6. All these belong to stage 6. Stage 6 is that stage which occurs after the classical Harappan culture had disappeared due to that serious earthquake. And why I see ideological changes there. Such seals have been found at Mohenjo-daro in the upper levels. And such seals have been found in the upper levels of Harappa also. I will come back to the archaeological thing. As I said, that it was a great center for bead making. And beads, we know that not used by the Harappans only, but I mean those were exported. Beads are very good items of export to Mesopotamia. But here is a typical example of Carlinian bead. Such beads are found at many Mesopotamian cities and Elam, that is southwestern part of Iran. And so these things are also found at other places in the Central Asia and Iran, distributed all around due to trade. And here you can see how many different kinds of stones, beautiful and more all siliceous stones, agate related to agate, Carlian, and all those were used for making beads. Yeah. Again, this is that famous largest stone image that Harappa yielded at Dholavira. It is 6 head was chopped off. Elbows were destroyed. It is a nude figure, seated nude figure. Elbows, hands are broken, knees are broken, head has chopped off, and yeah, his genitals were also rubbed off. We put a very delicate things, we do this impression on rubber. Then we found that yes, genitals were there, but they have been rubbed off. So it seems that we find some small sculptures at Mohenjo-daro, some from Harappa also, but they are very small, very tiny ones. It's a huge one, 68 centimeter height without head. So their Thappas did this mischief. It seems that they hated. They were iconoclasts, it seems to me. With all the Harappan statues, small one, have also been found mutilated. Either only head is found, or only the upper body is found, lower body is missing. Body is there, head is missing. Head is there, body is missing. It seems that is vandalism done during the late Harappan times, who were certainly iconoclasts, who didn't believe in idolatry. Yeah, some other interesting things. On the right side are some weights, gaming board. Achha. Here one thing again very important, I have to tell you, to the audience, that Mohenjo-daro is the only place where we have found around 1,000 weights of different shapes, sizes, and material and weight value. If all the weights found from different sites like Harappa, Mohenjo-daro, Kalibanga, Lothal, and other Raki Gadi, if you add them up, they do not come nearer 1,000, which Dholavira has yielded. With the help of the large number of these things, we saw that there is not one, but two weight systems differently. One is series A, one is series B. Series A are those weights which had been found commonly at other Harappan sites. But the aberrant sizes were also known from those places. The scientist, the Hami, who worked on them, says that they are aberrant weights. But there were no series, so they couldn't know what is the weight system of the aberrant weights. But here we have got series of weights from the smallest to the heaviest. That's why we could find out that there are two weight systems. We have coming to the funerary system, the cyst burial. They are very commonplace in the megalithic tombs of South India, whether Karnataka, uh, Tamil Nadu, Karnataka, and Andhra Pradesh. But and it was not known what was the origin, where from they got the inspiration for making subsist burials. We have got 6-7 types of burials here. Burials, not burials precisely speaking, they are memorials, because barring one, dozens of such the burials were investigated by us, but all are devoid of any skeleton. Their offerings are there. Their capstones were there. Offerings are there. Offerings of pottery, or they will put 1 or 2 beads or a small piece of gold. That's all. And the most interesting is this type. I will show you in the profile. Yeah. We investigated it thoroughly. It is all built up of mud bricks of Harappan standard, having having some traverse lines of mud bricks or in the last phase of stone. It is fashioned like a wheel, spoked wheel. And we found another one, which is without spokes. This is the profile of the tubulus 1, where we found the spoked wheel type of thing. And this is the second tubulus, where both are circular. The earlier one is 30 meter, having a diameter of 30 meters and height of 9 meters. It has also height of 9 meters, but the diameter is 24 meters. And it is circular, made on a circular platform, a wheel without spokes. So it is without spokes, the earlier one, spokes one, and we found a very reference to the later Vedic literature of these things. The spoke one is called Sara Ratha Chakrachiti. This is called Saprati Ratha Chakrachiti. The other day I was giving a lecture in the Mythic Society at Bangalore. There were great Sanskrit scholars were there, because I went there to attend a conference in which all Sanskrit scholars of Nepal and South India and other places of Maharashtra were there. They were, all of them were wonderful. They had such, they were reciting Vedas freely. So much great scholars were there. So when in the evening, I gave lecture of Dholavira and I talked about Sara Chakrachiti, Sapriti Chakri. The scholar said that these are the fire altars, but we are talking about the funerary monuments. Then I told them that it is in the Shastras also mentioned that Somapai persons, whether Brahmins or Kshatriyas, are entitled to have their funerary monument in the form of a fire altar. So, of course, this is fire altar, shape of a fire altar, but these are funerary monuments. In the tumulus, and very interestingly, from the middle level of the middle town, we found this piece of stone, which gives a form of a stupa, possibly showing elevation of a funerary monument like those of Yeah, हटाओ तो ऐसे. The lower part perhaps represents the circular platform and the upper part of the superstructure like this. This will be a platform. This is hemispherical superstructure, exactly looking like stupas of later time, historical times. Particularly Buddhas use such stupas all over India or even beyond India. So we can say the origin of Buddhist, the origin of such few monuments, origin of such kind of monuments or stupa architecture particularly is rooted in Harappan civilization. And there are such other tumuli also. We have not investigated them so far, but there are. In the tumulus one, the greater one, we find a necklace like this, string in a copper wire. And you see the two hooks are shown there, copper. And a bead was there from both sides, capped with gold. And a piece of gold or a what you call a leaf-shaped thing, possibly on the air ornament was also found, and the piece of gold was found in the big tumulus. And pottery offerings are profusion of pottery offerings along with these things, sophisticated things, but no skeleton. And whole thing, it seems, are put huddled as if some ceremony was done outside, and later on those all the material that was used for Shraddha ceremony were deposited in the tumulus dedicated to a important person, maybe royalty, maybe priest, possibly royalty, possibly some king. Query site where discarded members have been found because they have some weakness, inherent weakness, so they left them as such, and all those is extensive query site. I'm just this is another site, Badawali. All sites are very nicely planned, but there are some exceptions also. Badawali town's planning is totally different. It is just to give an idea that in addition to very regimented town planning of rectangular size, there were such exceptions too. Another exception is that all the outer fortification, citadel is inside the town wall, within the town wall, and citadel has its own fortification walls, and it is well within that. It is not separate from the lower town as elsewhere. But here the street system is radial, the kind of streets we find in New Delhi. There are certain focal points from which streets radiate like the rays of sun. That's all. It is just reconstruction of that. So this is all. Welcome again. Open to any questions, any queries, any
Yes, sir.
clarifications.
Sir, we have quite a few questions. You may want to stop the sharing, and we can all have a discussion quickly, so I can bring some of the questions that we have received and some of our own questions.
Sure.
So both Gauri and I can ask you. There are two similar questions. One from Mr. Pradosh Biswas and subsequently by Arun Sukumar. So Pradosha asked, in the peak Harappan phase, which is 2500 to 1900 BCE, what did common citizens use for tools? Were they using knives and cutters, that is basically tools of knives and cutters, using bronze, or were they still using stone?
Disruption is there. Yes, please.
Yeah, were you able to get my question, sir? His question was whether the common citizens were using bronze tools, bronze knives and cutters, or stone-based blades.
Both. At
Okay.
all Harappan sites, we found charred blades in profusion.
Okay.
And those are very effective for peeling, for cutting, and making some composite tools. Even sickles were made out of small fragments of chart.
Okay.
Those things have been found in even the early village farming community. People were using such sickles. The sickles have been found that those things were embedded in a, what you call it, charcoal, bitumen.
Okay.
Bitumen, and the wooden part is gone, but the things embedded in bitumen are there.
I see.
We complete idea about the kind of sickles they have been used for harvesting, for those things. So we used to find them small fragments. So we should not take them as a fragment of a charred blade. Fragment in the sense that we were taught when we were getting training at Kalibanga, we were told that these are broken pieces. No, they were not broken pieces. Intentionally broken to make some composite tool. This tool or that tool or this tool, like this. And it is very effective. And we know that copper is a mild metal. It becomes a bit harder when it is mixed with arsenic, some amount of arsenic or some amount of tin.
Okay.
So both we have found arsenic bronze, we have found tin bronze also in Harappan context. And very interestingly, we have found lead bronze also.
I see.
The mixing of lead was mainly used for making figurines, just like dancing figure.
Right, sir.
Because if a lead is mixed with copper, it becomes more pliable.
Got it. I understand. So there's a series of questions from Ramaswamy. One, I will put all the three questions to you, and maybe you can unravel them one by one. The first question is, apparently Sri J.P. Joshi discovered the site. I'm assuming Dholavira in around 1968. How does one archaeologist discover or zero in on one? Is it based on mounds or some particular features pointing to a possible Harappan site? How did Joshi discover it? This is first question. Okay. Second, which is all are related, so I will throw all of them together. Mansar on north and Manhar in south are the two rivers between which Dholavira is located. Would the location consideration for building the town be like that of Mesopotamian cities? That's his second question. Right? And the third is where the river stream flows and the directions affected by various earthquakes that seem to have happened. That is, locating this, would you follow how the river stream has flowed for the excavation, figure out how various earthquakes have affected it, and therefore zero in on, okay, let's look at this particular place and excavate it. Maybe you can take them all together and answer, sir.
Yes. The first is copper thing. I have already told about copper, tin bronze, arsenic bronze, and lead bronze. Okay.
Right, sir.
So far, the water reservoirs are concerned. You know, uh, we found the different phases of repairs also. It is
Okay.
not that only earthquake damaged them.
Okay.
There are some other earthquakes also which damaged them. But so long they were economically sound, they quickly rebuilt them, made them functional.
Okay.
It was only in stage 5 that is period of decline. They could not make it functional. Hmm? And if you compare Manhar and Mansar with
Mm-hmm.
the with the with the town planning of the town planning of Mesopotamia,
Right. Right.
no, actually, totally different. They totally they had a very elaborate system of making drain canals and making the canals uh, flowing flowing through the city.
Okay.
Hmm? And they were used for his agriculture as well as for consumption by the city people and all those things. They used to draw canals from the rivers.
Okay.
That kind of evidence we have yet to find from the Harappan sites. Harappan sites means Indus River and River Ravi or other rivers where on the bank of which the Harappan sites were located. So only Dholavira is the only place where we can say they we can see yes dams were put across the such channels to conduct the water into series of water
Mm-hmm.
tanks.
Okay.
Okay, but uh, we should also remember that Kachch is not is rainfall deficient area. In entire Kachch, there is no perennial source of water other than groundwater.
Okay.
There are no flowing rivers, no lakes, no springs. So whatever we find, I mean, those are all man-made. And we need the water is such a special commodity.
Okay.
Not only consumption of the humans, but also animals for construction work, for repair work. But water is water. I mean, there's uh, uh, Apo, Rigved, Apo, Brahma. Water is compared with Brahma.
Mm.
Brahman. So, since the climatic environment dictated the Harappans to make such reservoirs, to make dams, and they chose smaller torrents. There are big and deep channels also, which when in spade become untamable. But
Mm.
these are mild torrents, which can be tamed by putting dams.
Okay. Okay.
That's
Can
the
I ask,
reason. Eh?
can I ask one question related to the town planning? See, right now, Dholavira is located in the middle of the salt marshes in the Rann of Kutch, no?
Mhm.
So a natural question comes as to why would anybody plan a city in the middle of those salt marshes like? So, but I read somewhere that these salt marshes were not there in those days when Dholavira was flourishing, and they have probably come subsequently. Like, can you address that a little bit?
Actually, lot of environmental studies had done by the geologists and uh, topographers and sediments which were accumulated uh, on the bank of the Rana show that there was at least 4 to 6 meter uh, draft of water. Those were not just like the Rana as we see them today. They were water bodies, deep water bodies, in which the ships can be of boats can be plied. We know the Harappas are maritime people. They were very good navigator. They were navigating from here to Mesopotamia, to Oman, UAE. And so, I mean, as I say in the beginning, that location appears to be enigmatic. But our environmental studies says that they both Little Run and Great Run, both were having enough water for navigation.
Okay.
Eh?
So, in Dholavira, probably that is the only place where you have a signboard and a stone inscription. Everywhere else, you have only found seals. Right,
Yeah.
sir?
Yeah.
So, what does that tell us? Why is it that only here, and that too, we have found only one piece each? We have not really found a large sample. Any insights from you on that?
Maybe that is the beauty of our excavation. Eh? One thing. If I remember, the Marshal also said the Harappans used a lot of wood for making their things, and they were decorating wood also. So if they are decorating their door frames and all those things, since at Dholavira, gypsum was used for making that signboard inscription. Gypsum.
Right.
And that survived. When we are excavating that area, just a small part of one sign was found there. So we thought that it can be a mold. Then slowly, we started using surgical knives and blowpipes. Surgical knives, slowly, we started clearing the other part of the single sign. We found that it's a Harappan sign. Then that provoked us to look to the right, to look to the left. So that's how the entire inscription came to light. And it took us 3 months in fully exposing that inscription. Only that inscription. How that shows how slowly, scientifically we worked.
Okay.
Okay. And so far, what does it say? We do not know. If it is on the facade of the north gate, then it must be visible for the middle town, as well lower town, as well as the multi-purpose ground also. Visible all the time. White, shining white. People used to ask me, what is written? I said that Harappan script has not yet been deciphered, so I can't tell you. Unless this is decoded, I can't tell you. Then they used it, but then I wanted to say something. Then I said that R S Bisht is the emperor of Dholavira. Then they kept quiet. Used to, if it is not yet deciphered, how can I say that what is there? Madhivan from Tamil Nadu, Chennai. He studied, I read chaste old Tamil in that, and some Mr. Verma and his team said that it is the chaste classical Sanskrit is used in this inscription. So it is free for all. Right? So there are very wild theories are all running all around. Wild theories have been put forward, but real crux of the matter is not yet known.
Yeah. No, that's why I have not even brought to you questions related to script, language, etc. I've just dropped them. But there are a couple of questions. So we will just stop with just two questions. There are many more questions, but I will just present two questions to you of all. Quite a few people have asked, what was the purpose of the fortifications? Was it for the defense? Is there any evidence for warfare or attacks? Have weapons been found? So there's a lot of questions related to the fortification.
Yes, extremely intelligent question. And that may occur to the mind of many intelligent persons like you. What for fortification there? We are told that Harappans were a peaceful people. That's why their trade and commerce, their marketing system, everything flourished so nicely. I say, ever since man came on earth, he never lived in peace. He never lived in peace. There should be competition. When there is competition, then the civilization or culture progresses. If we are competing with Japan or with Germany or this thing, which are still, above us, we say that now we have the fifth economy in the world, but still Japan and Germany are occupying third and fourth position. But we are trying to achieve that we become the third powerful economy in the world. The competition is there. If there is no competition, nothing will happen. Peaceful people just stagnate. There is stagnation takes place. What I feel that there must be many city states, some big one, some small one, fighting among themselves. Just like in Mesopotamia. Guru was fighting with Lagash was fighting with Kish. They were always at war, unless the Sargon of Akkad brought about unity and carved out a big empire. Till then, they were fighting among themselves. Sometimes Gur will become more important. The other time, the Kish will become more important, or Lagash will become more important. They were always fighting among themselves, but there was a ethos, a cultural ethos that was binding the entire Sumeria. Culture, their pantheon is the same. Their pottery is the same. Their system of making towns is the same. Irrigation is the same. Agriculture is the same. But there are several city-states. This kind of situation we have in the 6th to 5th century BC. Because we say that there were 16 great Mahajanpadas, states, always fighting among themselves. Magad was fighting with Vaishali, Vajjis, annexed them, and Kashi, Koshal, all the Kuru, Panchal, always fighting among themselves all the time. But it was Magad which emerged as the imperial power among the Nandas. And when the Mauryas came, they had a much bigger empire. They carved out a much bigger empire that practically covered the entire subcontinent and going beyond up to Afghanistan. Because Ashokan inscriptions had been found there at Kandahar and at the site in Kabul Valley. So, by nature, we always fight. Students fight among themselves as soon as the classroom is over. Okay? And our families fight with each other. Cousins fight with their cousins. That's a bhratavya. is a word. Prathambi, Pitrabhi are two words in the Rig Veda. They are, they show relationship, close relationship. At the same time, they are said that they are your rivals or enemies also.
Sir, one final question. I think we have pretty much run out of time. Bhaskar has a question on have you in the tumulus 1 and 2 that you showed, the burial sites,
Yeah.
have you found any burial urns, either or direct burials? You mentioned that there were no direct burials, no bodies were found, but were there urn burials in those places, sir?
So far, some urn burials have been found in Harappa. But inhumation in which body was laid supine are found at Kalibanga, Harappa, and so many other sites also at Lothal. But one thing that's overlooked, that there are some burials which are blank, which have offerings only, no skeleton, no ashes. Sometimes they are rectangular, sometimes they are oval or circular. So that's why we say that Harappans were multi-ethnic society. Multi-ethnic society. Each ethnic group has its own system. And Dholavira is an exception, where barring one skeleton, that to at the surface itself, the superstructure is gone. Only one inhumation was found, ladies' inhumation found at the cemetery. Though we investigated dozens of memorials, but the only skeleton that was found in the grave was of a lady. Sometimes I jokingly used to say that the prince of Dholavira married a princess from Indus Valley. When she died, she was given proper burial. As you know that when Nargis died, Sumir Dutt did not cremate her body. It was buried in the graveyard. So it was a joke I used to crack.
Sir, thanks a lot. In fact, we have many more questions. And if we go into them, we will really run out of time for our second talk. We also started a little late. And thank you for your patience and the way you have explained. We were fortunate. We came as a group from Tamil Heritage Trust, visited Dholavira for spent a day there, little more than a day there.
You
stayed
did
there overnight, and it was fascinating. I mean, absolutely nobody there. How people like you have spent days and months and years to excavate this. It was really exhilarating seeing the signboard. I don't remember us seeing the stone inscription, but all the other things, many of the things that you showed, it was tremendous watching them, standing next to them, touching them. Thank you, and all the workers who had put in countless hours of work in digging and excavating that entire place. Thank you. Thanks a lot.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. Over to you, Gauri, for a quick roundup and then introducing the next speaker. Thanks, Dr. Bisht. You can take your time and leave anytime you want.
Okay, thank you.
That was a fantastic lecture. It was informative, interesting, and intriguing all in one go. Thank you very much, Dr. Bisht. As we are already running late, we'll quickly move on to the second talk of the day. We have Dr. Ajithprasad talking about Centenary Report, a brief history of the discoveries of Harappan civilization. Perspectives on Harappan Indus civilization have undergone several perceptible changes in the last 100 years of its discovery. Over these years, though we have acquired a lot of knowledge relating to the origin, spread, and decline of the civilization, some aspects are still a mystery to us. Chief amongst them, as already mentioned by Dr. Bisht, is the Indus script. Deciphering of this may give us a far clearer understanding of both the decline and the legacy of the civilization. In his presentation, Dr. Prasad will be focusing on the major landmark moments in the journey of discoveries that have helped us to understand the intrinsic features of the Harappan civilization. Dr. Prasad will also be emphasizing on the use of the latest technologies and tools and how these have helped us to unravel mysteries and shape our current views on this civilization. Dr. Ajithprasad retired as a professor and head of the Department of Archaeology and Ancient History at the Maharaja Sayajirao University of Baroda, after teaching prehistory and bioanthropology for over 3 decades there. His research interests span from Stone Age prehistory to Harappan archaeology. Dr. Prasad has been a part of the MS University excavations of the Harappan sites in North Gujarat, Kachchh and Saurashtra, where he has studied issues of hunter-gatherer transition and the beginning of the agro-pastoral life of early Harappan settlements of North Gujarat. Dr. Prasad is currently researching Harappan cultural development in Gujarat alongside Palaeolithic investigations in Kachchh. Over to you, Dr. Prasad.
Dr. Ajithprasad, can you please get your video on and sorry, just stay on, no problem, just for a minute.
Yes. For all those who were not able to attend the first lecture fully, it will be available at our YouTube link and you can pick it up from there.
Once the second lecture is also over, there will be a complete video of the first lecture and the second lecture that will be available.
Am I audible now?
Yeah.
Sir, you are audible now. We are
But,
unable to see your video though.
I know it is not getting activated. I don't know why.
Yeah, now it's activated.
Now we can see.
Yeah.
Now we
Yeah.
can-
Okay.
Sir, you should be able to share your presentation.
Yeah, I can.
Yeah.
Is everything fine now? Yeah.
Yes, sir. It's fine. You're on. Thanks.
Share. Where is share?
It's there at the bottom, sir.
Yeah.
Third.
Security, stop participant.
Participants
screen.
chat, share screen.
Yes. Not the one which I think.
So from the left, share screen is the third one, I think. It's
No,
green.
that may change, but you would see a green.
Green.
I understand that, but that is not what, it's not sharing the video. Okay.
No, so you click that, then you have to click the screen.
Sure. I am not able to kind of.
Then if you click share screen, it will give you all your screens that are open, no? Then click on the video.
Gauri, 1 second, let me talk to him. So what happens when you click on share?
I think the Zoom is actually kind of getting operated now.
You would have to go back to the Zoom window itself.
I did go there. But when I click there, what I get is a different, I don't get my presentation. I get another
That's okay.
screen.
You see your entire screen and your various applications, correct?
Never happened this way, but I don't see that. I get, okay. Wait a minute. Can you see it now?
Yes.
Yeah.
Now we are seeing.
Now go to full screen, sir. Yeah.
Is it okay?
Perfect.
Yeah.
Okay, no?
Yeah. Perfect.
Sorry for that.
No.
Sorry
No
for the
problem.
glitches.
No problem.
Yeah.
Absolutely no problem.
Yeah.
So, shall we start?
Yes, sir. You can start.
How many minutes do I have?
So you can take your time. We can comfortably go for an hour plus.
It's already
and then
late.
we can have 15-minute question and answers.
Okay. All right. Before I start my presentation, I would actually want to thank the Tamil Heritage Trust for the invitation, and especially to Kishore Mahadevan and Padri Sheshadri, those who have been actually kind of communicating with me. There will be many others who are involved in organizing this this meeting, and I am thankful to all of them. What I'm going to present, in fact, is actually a review of, as the title actually says, is describing the major landmarks in the Harappan research that actually happened in the last 100 years. Most of these, I suppose, have been already been kind of touched upon by Bisht. I will actually kind of focusing only some of the important aspects. Before what I'm going to present, in fact, is the results of almost 100 years of research that has actually gone into our understanding of Indus civilization, in which several institutions, archaeologists, and organizations are actually involved. Among these, I am quite thankful to my own university, the MS University of Baroda, Archaeological Survey of India, Gujarat State Archaeology and Museum Department, and the different projects, research projects in which I was actually a member, like the NOGAP team, Barcelona, Spain, the Indus project of RIN, Kyoto, Japan, and the University of Wisconsin-Madison, Kerala University, with whom we actually kind of collaborated in our research, and IIT Gandhinagar. And in addition to that, I am also thankful to several researchers and institutions who have contributed to better understand the Harappan archaeology over the years, especially our own students and fellow researchers. Now, this is 100th year of the discovery of Indus civilization. It is in 1924, September 20, John Marshall, after almost 3 years of excavations conducted at Mohenjo-daro and Harappa, kind of declared the discovery of Indus civilization, which actually with one stroke took the civilization of our subcontinent 2,000 years earlier than what had thought of earlier. And right from its discovery, there were actually 3 major concerns the archaeologists, historians actually kind of focused upon. One, in fact, was the spread of this civilization. It was obviously found in the Valley of Indus, originally, whether it was actually spread in the adjoining regions or not. That was one of the concerns. And the other major concern, in fact, what was its origin? And the third, in fact, was what, in fact, is the range of time bracket within which the Indus civilization may fall in. These are, many of these concerns have been actually kind of answered to a certain extent, especially the origin, chronology, etc. There are many aspects of the civilization which need further research to better understand finer aspects of the Indus civilization. That is John Marshall, actually the one who actually initiated the first excavation in 1921, both at Mohenjo-daro and Harappa, that led to the discovery of Indus civilization. Now, soon after this discovery, several explorations and expeditions were actually carried out to the Valley of Indus, and that primarily focusing in the Valley of Indus and adjoining regions. And that led to the discovery of several sites, several new sites in the Indus Valley and adjoining regions. But a major kind of watershed in the Harappan studies actually happened in 1947, when both the major cities, the Harappa and Mohenjo-daro, after the partition, when became part of Pakistan, and India had no, in Indian part of the border, had no Harappan known site at that time. There is only two sites which are known to be located in the Indian side of the border. One was in Gujarat, Rangpur in Gujarat. The other one was Kotla Nihang Khan, that is in eastern part of Punjab near Ropar. Now, this actually led to Indian archaeologists and those who are working in the universities, as well as those in the archaeological, spearheaded by archaeological officers of the Archaeological Survey of India, focused kind of surveys, research to locate new sites, to find out, are there more Harappan sites in the Indian side of the border? And that actually led to the discoveries in the 1950s and 60s, led to the discoveries of several sites in the Gagar Saraswati system, which was actually started off by the A. Ghosh, of the then Director General of Archaeological Survey of India in the 1950s. And it's almost at the same time in Gujarat, S.R. Rao, who is an officer of the Archaeological Survey of India. So today, we have more than 250 sites belonging to the Indus civilization, which Indus civilization or the Harappan civilization, which are reported from the Valley of Indus, as well as the Gagar Saraswati system and Gujarat. And the spread of the Indus civilization covers roughly about 1 million square kilometers. One of the, geographically speaking, one of the most widely spread Bronze Age civilizations of the contemporary ancient world. And in terms of time span, it actually found to be covering having a duration starting from 3600 BC to 14 or 1300 BC. So there are several institutions, both government organizations, research organizations, as well as the universities involved in this Harappan research, understanding the spread of Indus civilization, its chronology and its origin. And that led to the major surveys, documentation, and several publications detailing the features of Indus civilization. Coming to the chronological framework of the Indus civilization, as I said, it actually ranges from 3600 BC to 1300 BC, which you can actually see in this chart. And it also kind of compares the contemporary civilizations of the Mesopotamia, as well as Egypt and China. You do also come across several terms actually being used to describe the developmental features of Indus civilization. People actually use the Harappan, early Harappan, late Harappan to understand the beginning yeah, and the what is known as the the peak of the Indus civilization, as well as the declining phase of Indus civilization. Some of the authors have actually used terms that describe the process of development in terms of a cultural continuum starting from the food producing stage in the Valley of Indus and adjoining regions. So you have the food producing era, which started off from 7,500 or 7,000 BC, and then you actually have the beginning of the Bronze Age. Several Chalcolithic village farming settlements, which actually kind of came up in the Indus and adjoining regions. This is generally described as the regionalization era, and the urban phase is generally described as the integration era, where many of these regional, Chalcolithic Bronze Age cultures were actually integrated into what we actually understand as the urban phase of the Indus civilization. And then when the urban ethos kind of vanished, you actually come across a fragmentation of the polity of the Indus civilization. That period is generally described as the localization era. It's also sometimes known as the late Harappan or the post-urban Harappan. So in any case, what one can see is that one can actually see a gradual development of Indus civilization from a less complex village farming Chalcolithic with agro-pastoral life to an urban phase, and the final decline and disappearance of Indus civilization. That is what we now understand if you look at the chronological framework of Indus civilization. One of the important areas of Harappan research, in fact, is to understand the spread of Harappan sites in different environmental systems in the Indus Valley proper and adjoining regions like the Gagar Saraswati system and in Gujarat. Satellite remote sensing has extensively used to not only to locate the sites, but also to understand the environmental setting of the site, and also to understand the settlement pattern. Using DIS-based tools, people have been extensively using. There are several research institutions which actually use these tools to understand the finer aspects of how the Indus civilization actually kind of exploited the environmental resources, how they actually kind of interacted, and how they actually spread from one region to the other. That is one of the, there are several institutions which actually use these tools quite effectively to understand the settlement features and settlement patterns of Indus civilization today. The other important areas of research as far as the Indus civilization is concerned is its antecedent state, the origin, how exactly it exactly originated. When it was actually discovered in the 1924, there was its antecedent stages were not actually very clear. People actually thought that it suddenly appeared as a full-fledged civilization. That belief has been actually found to be completely wrong today. What one can actually see today, in fact, is the origin or the antecedent stages of Indus civilization can actually be seen in several of the village farming agro-pastoral settlements actually started coming up from the beginning of the 4th millennium BC onwards in the Indus Plain, Balochistan, the northern part of Punjab, etc. You have several iconic sites of this early, what we generally call the early Harappan or the pre-urban Harappan, which are actually found in the Indus Plain or in Balochistan, like you have Amri and Kotiji in the Middle Indus. We have Quetta or the Dam Sadat and other sites in the Quetta region. We have in the northern part of Punjab, in the Ravi Basin, you have the Ravi phase of the Harappa culture, early Harappan. A similar kind of developments have actually been found to be happening in the eastern fringes of Indus civilization, that is in the Gagar system, as well as in Gujarat. This is a very recent kind of an understanding. Of course, in the 1960s onwards, the early Harappan phase of Harappa culture in the Gagar system has already been identified by the researchers. It is actually described as a Kalibangan 1 or South Siswal. We have several sites belong to the early Harappan, which has been actually reported. Some of them, in fact, are actually quite fascinating. I will be touching upon that issues of that little later. Similar kind of early Harappan settlements have also been found from Gujarat. Gujarat was always thought to be came into the Indus fold only during the urban phase. The last 3 decades of research has actually kind of help to understand that the process of cultural development of the Indus civilization or the Harappan civilization in Gujarat was almost exactly similar what we have actually seen in the Indus Valley. We have three major regional, what we call the regional Chalcolithic agropastoral traditions, which has been actually found and recognized in Gujarat. They have been actually dated from 3600 BC to 2800 BC. Among these three major ones, what we actually come across spread in northern part of Gujarat as well as the southeastern part of Kachchh is what is generally known as Anartha, which has been dated from 3600 or 3700 BC onwards. Anartha, in fact, is the traditional name of North Gujarat. You also have a similar kind of cultural development happening in the Bhavnagar coast of Saurashtra, where my cursor actually moves. Yeah, where my cursor actually moves here. Padri, which has also been dated to around 3600 BC. Further south, in fact, is the pre-Prabhas assemblages dated to around 3300 to 3000 BC. So, and the spread of these has been actually found even in North Gujarat. So, what one can see is that there are pockets of early agropastoral cultural development, which is affiliated to the early Harappan in Gujarat, dating back to 3600 BC, which is almost contemporary with the similar kind of development you come across in the Gagar system, as well as in different regions of Pakistan. That is, whether be it in the Indus Valley, Middle Indus Valley, or the northern part of Punjab, or in Balochistan. Now, among these, the most better studied one, in fact, is the another tradition found at Loteshwar, which is in the northern part of Gujarat. These early Harappan settlements or early agropastoral settlements, which you actually come across in North Gujarat, are actually well defined in terms of not only in terms of material culture, but also in terms of its chronological context. They have been dated from 3700 BC to 3000 BC. And then you also have pre-Prabhat, which has been dated from 3300 BC to 2900 BC. What is also equally important, in fact, is in North Gujarat, you actually do come across a very rich Mesolithic substratum, which actually forms the platform upon which the early Harappan agropastoral communities actually kind of develops. So in other words, North Gujarat was not a cultural vacuum when the agropastoral communities actually kind of started emerging in that region. In fact, these Mesolithic hunter-gatherer communities actually form, which has been dated, as you can see, 7500 BC. They actually from the template upon which the early Harappan agropastoral regional Chalcolithic cultures developed not only in North Gujarat but also in the Saurashtra coast. So these are some of the easily identifiable material remains of these early agropastoral communities dating back to 3600 BC to 3000 BC. What you can actually see it in here, in fact, is the kind of ceramics mostly dominated by the medium-sized pots and bowls, whereas in pre-Prabhas, it is a totally different kind of material, and potteries and other material remains. You can see a lot of corrugated vessels. Here you can see on in Loteshwar, you can actually see a lot of paintings, use of white color, etc. All these are completely absent in pre-Prabhas, no paintings, mostly incised decorations and corrugated vessels. Now, that in fact is the pre-urban or early Harappan cultural development, the outline of the pre-urban or early Harappan cultural development in Gujarat. Whereas when we come to Gagar Saraswati system, that is in the eastern extension of the Indus civilization from the Indus Valley, what we actually come across, as I mentioned earlier, the Soti Siswal Kalibangan has already been kind of identified and recognized as a pre-Harappan, so the early Harappan cultural development at Kalibangan and other regions. But then there are two very important sites that has actually been excavated of late in the 1990s and the early part of 2004 and 5. These are Kunal and Virana. These are in fact very rich sites, which actually shows material remains which are different from what has been actually, which also include material remains different from what has been actually found at Kalibangan or Soti Siswal. This includes one of the easily identifiable pottery ceramic assemblage of this early cultural development at both at Birana. At Birana, in fact, is what is generally described as the Hakra ware, a kind of ceramic which is found to be quite widely spread in the Cholistan sites as well as in the at Harappa and Jalilpur, that is in the northern part of Indus Basin. And there are also a lot of potteries which actually shows incised decoration, which appears to be a kind of local indigenous development. And what is more important, in fact, is these two sites actually show very early date, especially Birana actually shows very early date, which actually created some interesting controversy regarding some complexities, not controversy, complexities in understanding the cultural development in this region. This is the Kunal site. This has been excavated in the 1990s and then recently re-excavated. And Birana, in fact, has been excavated. This is the site of Birana, excavated in 2004-5 and for 3 consecutive seasons. That so most of our information actually come from those excavations. Now, as I said, if this is the cultural sequence, the site at Birana actually gives a date starting from 6000 BC to 2500 BC for the development of Indus civilization. In fact, it goes up to almost 7000 BC. According to L.S. Rao, he actually kind of divided the entire cultural assemblage, which he actually came across at Birana into 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 stages of development. Right from the very beginning, going back to almost 7,500 BC onwards or 7,000 BC onwards, he called it period 1A, which is Hakraware. Hakraware and the use of copper, use of metal. And then in period B, which is early Harappan, which has been actually dated from 6,000 BC to, as you can see it in here, 6,000 BC to 4,500 BC. That is what he calls as early Harappan. And the next one, 4,500 BC to 3,000 BC, is what he called the period 2A, which is the early part of the urban Harappan or the mature Harappan. So his scheme is slightly different from what we have actually seen in other parts of the Indus civilization, be it in Indus Valley proper or in Gujarat or in other sites in the Gagar Saraswati system. Only Birana actually provides this kind of a sequence with a very early date. And these dates are actually coming from the series of radiocarbon dates, samples which are collected from the excavation at Virana. And the period second B is mature Harappan. That is the actual urban phase, starting from 3000 BC, going up to almost 1800 BC, and then after 1800 BC to 1300 BC, what you have the late Harappan. Now there is, and if you actually compare that with the sequence in the Indus Valley, what you actually see is that in the Indus Valley, the early Harappan starts only somewhere around 3600, 700 BC. Prior to that is different stages of the Neolithic, the food producing. There is no use of metal till almost 3700, 3600 BC. Its metal use starts only around the beginning of the fourth millennium BC. And then and early Harappan is actually from 3700 BC to 2600 BC, and 2600 BC to 1900, 1800 BC is the urban Harappan. And then, of course, after the 1800 BC, you have the late Harappan or the post-urban Harappan. Now, what happens here is that material cultural development. Wait a minute, let me take this off. Material cultural development, and there is a mismatch in the material cultural development and the chronology that has been proposed by Rao. As I said, the cultural sequence is essentially based on a series of radiocarbon dates from Virana excavation. Only that site has actually shown very early date. No concrete evidence of Neolithic or Mesolithic substratum of the Chalcolithic Hakra-Veres tradition has been actually found from this site. Now, that is important. In the Indus Valley, you actually come across, before the beginning of the Chalcolithic way of life, you have a very rich Neolithic tradition that actually, from which the Chalcolithic way of life actually emerges somewhere around 3700 BC. And that is actually not found in any of the sites in the Gagar-Saraswati system, especially in the northern part of Gagar-Saraswati system. There is no clear evidence of indigenous Chalcolithic agropastoral life so far. What we come across here is the beginning of copper using metal using agropastoralists going back to 7000 or 7500 BC. And they along with the remains are actually found fully domesticated sheep, cattle, sheep, and goat. Now, there are no Neolithic substratum. There are no Mesolithic hunting-gathering substratum in this region, which essentially means that indigenous development of agropastoral way of life probably was not possible because there are no wild cattle, sheep, or goat available. There is no evidence of them actually living in that region. So that is the reason there is a mismatch in the radiocarbon date as well as the archaeological chronology. That is the radiocarbon date and the material evidence which we actually come across. It, in fact, is a major challenge for archaeologists. Where exactly, one does not imagine that the radiocarbon dates are actually wrong. We actually have to reinvestigate the site to understand why this mismatch is actually happening. There is a mismatch of more than 3000 years. It needs to be resolved. I suppose at the moment we do not have a clear picture regarding this early date, this mismatch between the early date and the archaeological evidence what we have to understand the cultural development, agropastoral way of life in that region. Yeah. Can I? 1 minute. Yeah. Just 1 second.
No problem.
I cannot read what. Okay. So, all right. Now, this is a map which actually shows the distribution of Harappan sites. I suppose the map very clearly shows that there are 5 or 6 major large Harappan urban centers, which includes Mohenjo-daro, Harappa, then you have Dholavira, Rakhigetti, Ganveriwala, many of these, except the Dholavira and Dakigadi, are actually in Pakistan. We have Mohenjo-daro, which is very close to Mohenjo-daro. These are the major urban centers. I mean, in addition to these major urban centers, you actually do come across a hierarchy of settlements, which is a smaller township, a still smaller township, and also villages, and then hamlets. If you look at the distribution of Harappan settlements, what you can actually see is that it's a network involving a hierarchy of settlements that includes large cities, smaller towns, villages, and much smaller campsites, like measuring just less than 1 hectare, 100 10 meter by 10 meter, or sometimes 100 by 100, etc. So not all settlements are actually as large as we actually imagine Mohenjo-daro, but they are actually very rare. Such sites are actually very rare. Now, what has actually emerged in recent research in this site, in fact, is the recognition of regional traits in the Harappa culture. When the Indus civilization was originally discovered, and when the material culture was actually examined, most people actually have an understanding that most of the artifacts and material culture which we come across in different parts of different regions of the Indus civilization, be it in the Indus Valley proper or the Garsara system or in Gujarat, they are quite uniform, but very, very homogeneous. But that has actually found to be not correct. The regional traits has actually been recognized right from the very beginning, but they did not actually get the importance they deserve, because people were essentially looking at the uniformity and homogeneity in Harappan cultural remains, be it in Gujarat or actually coming from the northern part of Punjab. One of the areas which actually shows this regional diversity or the regional traits very overtly, in fact, is Gujarat. This has been actually identified in the middle of the 1980s that is where the Gujarat is actually located. The material remains which has been actually found in Gujarat, Harappan cultural remains found in Gujarat, has been found to be slightly different from what has been actually reported from the Indus Valley proper and the Gagarsara system. So this is what actually led those who have actually this difference has actually been noticed right from the very beginning by S.R. Rao and other researchers, those who excavated Lothal, Rangpur, etc. And they actually have given different names to describe these things. But it's chronological. They actually thought these were essentially the cultural development Harappan cultural development you come across in Gujarat probably will much slightly later than the kind of cultural development you come across in the Indus Valley proper. So the difference, therefore, they thought, is because of the gradual development and evolution of Indus civilization or Indus material remains in Gujarat. This has actually been kind of found to be wrong after a series of radiocarbon dates from Rojdi, one of the Harappan sites in the middle of Saurashtra. A series of radiocarbon dates actually showed that the dates are actually contemporary with the urban phase of Indus civilization. As you can see, it starts from 2600 BC to almost 1900, 1800 BC, falling well within the urban phase of the Indus civilization. But the material remains, especially the ceramic assemblages and many of the standard artifacts which you come across in the Indus Valley proper are actually found to be absent in here. In spite of that, in place of that, what you actually come across artifacts showing the regional features. So, in order to describe these disparity, Professor Posel in fact, actually kind of named the Harappan cultural remains you come across in Saurashtra or Gujarat as Sorat Harappan. And the one which you actually come across in the Indus Valley and adjoining regions in proper is a classical Harappan. It is only to understand the difference or to describe the regional traits or regional traits in Saurashtra. Okay, so and the difference in fact is actually quite easily visible, perceptible in ceramic assemblages, because you can actually see this one is some of the classical Harappan vessels. You can see this perforated jar and vessels showing characteristic paintings, beakers, goblets, etc. These kind of vessels, in fact, are actually found to be very rare or completely absent in most of the sites, 99% of the sites or 95% of the sites, Harappan sites in Gujarat. Instead, what you have, in fact, is different vessels actually showing different style, dominated by bowls, and the bowls. This kind of hemispherical bowls are actually almost completely absent in the classical Harappan context. And one of the very characteristic form of bowls which you come across in Harappan sites in Gujarat is what is known as a bowl with a handle, what is generally described as a stud-handled bowl. The stud being broken here, you can see the broken studs here. So these kind of vessels, and also the painting style is also different. So this is what actually led Posel to describe Professor Posel and other researchers to describe it as the Sorat Harappan. So Sorat Harappan is therefore actually defined as the regional manifestation of the urban phase of the Harappa culture during the urban phase in Saurashtra. No, the difference is also found the way they actually kind of organized or in the structure of the settlement plan. As we know, the classical Harappan sites do actually show a bipatrate or tripatrate kind of plan. You have a citadel and you have a low town, very clearly demarcated segment within the well-planned settlement. First of all, they are very large compared to Sorat Harappan settlements. And Dholavira is something around about 48 hectares. And whereas Lothal, in fact, Lothal is around 10 hectares. On an average, if you take, it is around 10.8 hectares, Whereas when you come to Sorat Harappan, they are actually kind of much smaller. The largest one, which is a site in Saurashtra known as Jadak or Pitad, is around 15 hectares, bigger than Lothal. But then that is one of a site which is largest in Sorat Harappan. But on an average, they are just 3.5 hectares. So 1/3 smaller than the classical Harappan site if you take the average. Although in the larger settlements, Sorat Harappan settlements, you might actually come across a semblance of planning with a fortification, where the fortification, the features of the fortification appears to be slightly different from the features of the fortification you come across in the classical Harappan. But many of these larger Sorat Harappan settlements like Pitad or Kotla Badli do also actually incorporate an open space, an open court in the settlement. And it has been actually kind of argued that this open space actually meant for managing pastoral heads by the Sorat Harappans. You also do come across variation between the classical Harappan and Sorat Harappan in the kind of crops they kind of cultivated. The Harappans, the classical Harappans actually depended on winter cultivation, winter crops like wheat, barley, legumes. Basically, that was these are the major cultivated plants of the classical Harappans in the Indus Plain and adjoining regions. What we call the winter crops. Whereas in Saurashtra, in Gujarat, it's a semi-arid region. Cultivation of wheat and barley was very difficult. They have to actually depend upon millets. It was millet-based cultivation. And there are also evidence of rice and other legumes which are actually cultivated in Gujarat sites. You can actually see in this chart that, more than 3/4 of the crops with the classical Harappans cultivated were all winter crops. Whereas in Saurashtra, it's just opposite. It was the millet. There are 6 different kinds of millet which were actually cultivated, which actually formed the staple food of the Harappans. Doesn't mean that the wheat and barley were not actually cultivated. They were also cultivated occasionally. Harappans, in fact, were opportunistic farmers, those who actually judiciously use the environmental resources for farming activities. Both in Gujarat as well as in the Gagar Saraswati system, you do actually come across cultivation of rice, and which how intensively this cultivation rice actually happened, one does not really know. But there are evidence of rice being actually kind of exploited, cultivated in Gujarat as well as in the Gagar Saraswati system. But what's important is that the difference between the classical Harappan and the regional Swarat Harappan can also be seen in the kind of plants, kind of agricultural crops they actually kind of cultivated. One actually depended on winter crops, whereas the other depended on summer crops dominated by millets and the legumes. In fact, the tradition of cultivation of millets in Gujarat by the Swarat Harappans, one can see the root of it actually going back to the early Harappan Chalcolithic cultures, which we come across in North Gujarat and in Saurashtra. There are macrobotanical charred grains of several millets which have been found from excavations at Loteshwar going back to 3600 BC to 2900 BC. Not only we have these charred grains, but also exploitation of millets has also been testified by the starch grain analysis. The presence of millets, presence of various different edible pulses has also been actually verified on the basis of starch grain analysis. The residues of which are actually trapped in the grinding stones were actually kind of extracted, and then were analyzed under higher magnification to identify the kind of residue these grinding stones and the pestle stones do have, and that they kind of indicated the processing of millets, processing of other pulses, and also some of the starch grains coming from edible leaves has also been found from these early Harappan settlements, which clearly indicate that the exploitation of locally available millets and other edible pulses started from the early Harappan times, going back to 3600 BC onwards. The other aspect of the subsistence, in fact, the Harappan subsistence was animal pastoralism. Both humped cattle and water buffaloes, sheep and goat. These were kind of the major pastoral animals kept both by the classical Harappans as well as the regional Swarat Harappans. So there is no great distinction in the exploitation of pastoral animals as between the Swarat Harappans and the classical Harappans. There is very little evidence of horse, hardly any evidence of horse, donkey, or double humped camel in the Harappan context. If at all they appear in the very late phase of the Harappan civilization. Now, of late, isotope studies and fatty acid residue studies have actually been used to understand the kind of diets the Harappan actually had. This is a new area of research where you actually kind of analyze the food residues left behind in the pottery vessels. And then one can also study the from that one can actually study. It has been actually proved that Harappans were actually using dairy products. This is on the basis of residue studies. Also, meat provisioning and livestock management. This has been actually kind of investigated through isotope studies of the tooth enamel, which actually helped us to understand the pattern of meat distribution and how it was actually varied from different in a site of different groups of people within a site. This is by looking at the isotope signatures which are found in the tooth enamel of cattle, sheep, and goat. Fatty acid residue analysis of both early Harappan sites in North Gujarat as well as the urban Harappan sites in Gujarat has been actually carried out to understand the difference in the meat preference between these two groups, early Harappans as well as the urban Harappans. One can residue analysis, especially the isotope and fatty acid residue analysis, is a recent tool that has been actually used to understand various aspects of food consumption and food provisioning by the Harappans of the Indus civilization. Now, coming to the other aspects of economic production, the agriculture. Apart from agriculture, the mainstay of Harappan economic production, in fact, was the production of craft items. In fact, the craft production was the major engines of urban growth. What you actually come across in this here is that the Harappan crafts actually involved the production of consumable ornamental items like the bangles, beads, etc. And then the raw materials of which were actually kind of located in different parts of the Harappan cultural domain. This need to be actually kind of collected, acquired, and then it need to be processed to make the consumable items, and then it to be distributed, which essentially means that you need to have a very efficient network for acquisition of raw material, production, as well as the eventual distribution of finished products. So that is what has been actually seen. Many of these, what one can actually see is that the major raw materials, in fact, are the semi-precious stones of carnelian, agate, jasper, etc. And then also for making bangles, it was marine gastropod shell bangles. The raw materials of which were actually found in the Saurashtra coast. Okay. So what one can see is that this is most of this semi-precious stone source area is actually found in Gujarat and adjoining regions. It is from here you have the place in Ratanpur, which is in the southern part of Gujarat. Then you have 2 or 3 resource areas in Kachchh, Kantek, Mardak Bed, etc. It is from here this semi-precious stone raw materials were collected, and then it was probably kind of supplied to the major production centers like Dholavira or Lothal, or it must have actually traveled all the way to Channudaro, is a major center for producing craft items, and probably at Rakigadi as well. So which actually speaks volumes about the efficient network for acquisition of raw material and also the kind of efficient distribution of these raw material as well as the finished products by the Harappans to maintain their what is known as economic prowess. So what you actually see it in here is the craft production and emergence. The craft production eventually resulted into the emergence of urban centers, and the urban urban centers were at least in Gujarat, in fact, was Lothal and Dholavira. And then if you go to the Indus Valley, you have Channudaro, you have Harappa, Rakigadi. These are our major production centers. In addition to these major production centers, there are also what we call the smaller production centers, especially in Gujarat, primarily because many of these raw materials for the craft production, be it shell or semi-precious stones, were all actually distributed in the vicinity or within the geographical region of Gujarat and its adjoining areas. So for the shell bangle production, the marine gastropods which are actually used for the shell bangle production are actually found in the Saurashtra coast of Gujarat. So sites like Bagasra, Shikapur, or Lothal, these were the or Dholavira, these were the major, or Kanmer for that matter. These were all major centers for craft production, but the smaller settlement, not as big as Dholavira or Lothal. So I will just briefly explain one of the smaller settlements, which Bagasra, which is actually located just at the edge of the Gulf of Kachch here. And this is a small settlement measuring just 2 hectares. You do actually come across extensive production of major craft items like shell bangles or stone beads or faience beads, etc. And most of his productions were actually confined to the fortified area. Now, this is the fortification where my cursor actually moves, and you actually come across a shell workshop within this fortified area. There is also faience and a stone bead workshop within the fortified area. There were also, evidence of craft activity carried out outside the fortified area. These were probably household activities, whereas this one was actually kind of catering to mass production of many of these craft items like shell bangles or beads. So this is one of those shell workshop which was excavated Bagasra. As you can see, these are 2 piles of uncut or intact shells in the workshop, and there is also a small container having more than 3,000 bangle circlets, which unpolished bangle circle, which can then be kind of polished to make them define bangles. So apart from bangles, they also produce ladles or other ornamental items and inlay pieces. Bangles obviously was the most popular craft item produced from the shell. The same site also has evidence of what is known as stone bead working, faience working, and stone bead working. A small area which probably was used for the production of faience. Faience, in fact, this is a synthetic material which is actually produced by powdered quartz mixed with an alkali and then heated at high temperature, which turns into a kind of bluish green kind of a paste. That is what you actually see it in here. Bangles and beads and occasionally bangles were made out of this faience material. So it is not a naturally occurring material, it's a synthetic material. This is actually kind of produced synthetically. Whereas you actually come across, this is another workshop for stone bead working. You can see several silos containing, which actually were used for the stockpiling, where the semi-precious stone raw materials were stockpiled in the workshop. So you can see this in here. The material which we actually raw material which we actually come across is what is known as a variegated jasper, which is a rare material used for making beads by the Harappans. The source area is found to be somewhere close to Jamnagar, not very far from Bagasra. So it actually shows how important the bead production or lapidary bead production for the Harappan economy was. Another important aspect of Harappan technology, Harappan bead production technology, in fact, was stone beads need to be perforated. Today we actually use diamond tipped drill bits for perforating the beads. But then Harappans never actually never actually used. There is no evidence of Harappan actually using a diamond drill bits for perforating stone beads. What Harappans used, in fact, was a special stone, which is named as ernestite, which has special qualities. It does not actually it can actually withstand a high amount of heat that is generated because of the while drilling the beads because of the friction. It does not actually snap and break. So, till this material was actually discovered or identified by the Harappans, drilling a stone bead, in fact, is a very tedious process. With a diamond tip drill, you can easily, this is Pratap Bhai from a diamond, a bead perforator, who actually use a diamond tipped drill for making holes in stone beads today at Khambat near in Gujarat. Okay, these are some of those drills. At the tip of this drill, will have a small little diamond, which actually cut through the bead very easily. But the Harappans never actually used a diamond tipped drill. They actually used these this is the raw material from which these what is known as the drill bits or drill heads were actually produced. And these were actually used for exactly the same way today the diamond drill heads are actually used for perforating the beads. So, and the Harappans actually hit upon this raw material only somewhere around 2600 during the urban phase. Till then, there is no evidence of the use of ernestite. It has been actually postulated that this ernestite raw material is actually probably found in Kachch or parts of North Gujarat. So the Gujarat region essentially played a very significant and important role in the bead production, and in turn the craft production and the economic production of the Harappans. Sorry. Another very important craft products which has not been properly studied is the textile. There are very little evidence of Harappan textiles, primarily because textiles are not durable. They easily get degenerated and decayed, and it will disappear. What we actually have, how do we know there are textiles? What we actually come across, in fact, is a textile impression on clay. Textile impression on clay, as you can actually see it in here. And also you can see this, excuse me, thread marks, which are actually found on terracotta pieces, as you can see it in here. Which, excuse me. There are evidence of the Harappans actually using cotton as well as wool and flax for making their threads or yarns and making their fabric. There is also evidence of jute being actually used for the production of textiles. But in any case, the evidence for textile production, in fact, is very, very meager. This is one of the craft items. Probably one of the biggest craft products of the Harappans, but very little studies have actually been carried out in this field, primarily because there are not enough samples to study them. That is another example of textile impression on pottery, as you can actually see very fine impression of textile. Which are actually found on pottery. Now, the economic, this actually resulted into, during the urban phase, we actually come across the emergence of urban centers and and that resulted into the emergence of new social hierarchy. How do we know that there is a new social hierarchy? That is primarily because, excuse me, it is very difficult to actually read the social hierarchy from material remains. But what one can actually kind of see from the large urban centers, which are actually kind of extremely well planned, showing some amount of common features in almost all urban centers, in terms of they being protected by a thick, massive fortification wall. For example, the fortification wall at Dholavira is 80, as you might have actually heard from Bishji, it is 18 meters at the base and 10 meters at the top, suggesting that there were humongously large structures which actually demanded investment of large resources. And that is not actually possible unless there was an administrator who could actually kind of command those kind of activities to be executed. The uniformity of the planning, as well as the construction of such large structures which you come across at Dholavira or Lothal or Mohenjo-daro or Harappa, clearly indicate that there was a commanding authority, those executive authority, those who were responsible for undertaking these kind of activities. How exactly this administrative authority was actually mandated, whether it was through hereditary or through selection, which we do not know. But one thing is obvious, that without such an authority, it will be very, very difficult to actually maintain such large urban centers the way we see it today. And then you can actually see uh, uh, most of the urban centers, be it at Dholavira or at Mohenjo-daro or at Harappa, you actually come across the fortification. Apart from the fortifications of the settlement being large, it also been provided with very elaborate gateways. And then you have just heard about Bishji talking about how the North Gate. This is Dholavira. This is the North Gate, where he actually came across a large inscription by the side of North Gate. And the presence of these statues, like the often described as the priest king, or these kind of the stone statues, which you actually come across at Mohenjo-daro and other sites, most probably, there is no hypothetically, most probably indicate is a representation of that administrative authority that existed, or that kind of oversaw the day-to-day activities of the urban centers, be it at Mohenjo-daro or at Harappa or at Dholavira. Then another evidence of social hierarchy is the burial. Burials, in fact, can easily reflect the hierarchical position of the person who is actually kind of buried in the grave. Unfortunately, not in the case of Indus civilization. You actually see most of the monumental structures of Egypt or Egyptian civilization or Mesopotamian civilizations are all burial structures. Whereas in the case of Indus civilization, most of the burials were actually found to be frugal and Spartan. There is no elaborate burial architecture or burial structure you generally come across in the Indus civilization. First of all, there are not all sites have actually yielded cemeteries or burials. There are very few. Harappa had. You had from Kalibangan, you had from Rakikadi, you have from Farmana, you have from Dholavira and Lothal. We have a number of burial sites which are found in Kachch. In many other places, you do not come across evidence of burials. It's not that they were not there. Probably we are not in a position to kind of, most of the burials are actually kind of identified by accident. So, this one is the burial from Harappa. Generally, this is the burial you see it at Harappa. In fact, is a typical example of a Harappan burial where you actually come across the body being laid supine, and hardly any burial goods. At the most, you come across a few potteries, and then very rarely you come across a few, very rarely, bangles or necklaces made of beads, etc. They are very rare. Otherwise, the Harappans certainly had a different philosophy about the life after death than the Egyptians or the Mesopotamians. And there is no particular direction in the way the body was actually buried. In different sites, even at the same site, you actually come across different orientation or different direction in the body was actually buried. One of the interesting sites for understanding the burial practices of the Harappan is Dholavira, which has actually yielded several unique burials showing different architectural features. The tumulus one, which you have already, which Bisht has already described, so I'm not going to go into detail. You can see some of the features here that is very unique to Dholavira, which is not actually found no other sites. And then you also have these kind of cyst or cistine cairn, a kind of architectural style, burial architecture style you generally associate with the megalithic burials of much later period. And then you have also rock-cut chambers, rock-cut pits in which, it meant for burial. And most of the burials, except in one case where he actually came across, a skeleton at Dholavira, they were all found to be devoid of any skeletal remains, except this one where he actually did come across a skeleton. But what is interesting here is that the burial goods, which are actually, even though it actually shows variation in the burial architecture, you have the cyst, you have the capstone, you have a rock cut chambers, you have a tumuli, etc. The burial goods you actually come across, especially the pottery, are all actually found to be the Harappan, classical Harappan kind of potteries. This is actually very interesting. Now, when we talk about the burials, we have a few burials which are actually found from Kachch. You have burials from Surkotada, Pabumad, Thaneti, Junakattiya, and also a few burials from North Gujarat, Santali, Vaharvo, Nagwada. All these burials actually show features which are different from what has been found at Lothal or Harappan burials. These are actually the potteries which you come across within these burials are actually found to be early Harappan. First, the burials of this kind was first actually excavated from Surkotada by J.P. Joshi. He actually excavated a series of burials, a cemetery which is 300 meters away from the habitation. And he found the burial pottery found in these burials are actually more closer to the early Harappan. And that's the same feature which we came across the burials in North Gujarat at Santali or Vaharvo or Nagwada. And similar features are actually found from Pabumat and Dhaneti, and these two sites are actually excavated very recently in the 2016-17 onwards. So I'll show you some of the pictures of that here. So this is from Dhaneti, where you have these are actually very large oblong pits measuring 3 meters to sometimes it can be 5 meters. You don't need 5 meter long pit to bury a person. So you do come across this. In some of them do have skeletons, and then a series of pots, a number of pots which are actually kept within that grave pit. And in some cases, the grave pit was actually covered with capstones, and in some other cases, this is where the grave was, and it is covered with capstones, and it is actually kind of surrounded by what is known as rings, rings or the stone rings, stone forming a circle, stone circles around it. And within this, within the burial, some of them do not have any skeleton. Some of them, as you can see, have skeletons. And the number of potteries you come across actually vary from sometimes just one or two. And the maximum which we actually come across is something around about 54 or 56. So probably that would actually kind of suggest the importance or the hierarchical position of the individual which is buried, but it is an hypothetical position. There is no way one can actually kind of confirm this position. So burials should therefore actually kind of reflect some features of the social hierarchy by looking at the burial goods or burial architecture. Now, similar kind of burials have been actually found, as you can actually see, further northwest of Dhaneti by Kerala University, who has been excavating last 3 years at the site. They excavated more than 100 burials, very similar to what has been actually reported from Dhaneti, but more, different kinds of burials. Which includes burial chambers with the stone masonry, which has not been found from Dhaneti. So you can actually see this is the burial chamber, which has been actually built by using stone masonry. Some of them are, as you can see, they were 5 or 6 meters long. And recently, they also did come across the burial of a cattle. Not only humans, but even cattle was actually buried. So very interesting. And what is also important, in fact, here is that these burials, the potteries which are found in these burials are actually found to be early Harappan. As I said, all these, what you come across in North Gujarat are all actually have early Harappan ceramics along with the burial, indicating that this is a tradition that precedes the urban phase of Indus civilization. And what you come across at Dholavira, in fact, is actually a continuation of that tradition during the urban phase. Now, that's about the burials and then how it can actually help us to understand the hierarchy, social hierarchy. Now, coming back to this, the Harappan script and language. As we know that, this is one of the enduring enigmas or the puzzles of the Indus civilization. I suppose right from the day it was actually discovered in 1924, people have been actually trying to break the code, read the Indus scriptum. So far, no one has actually kind of able to read it. There were many claims how it was been about decipherment. None of them actually found to be stand to the scrutiny. There are, it has been actually kind of argued that there are 400 to 450 signs in total with the Harappans actually used. These scripts are actually found on seals. The seals actually may have the writing at the top and then a motif, which could be an animal motif. And then sometimes some of the seals do not have that, just inscription, no animal motif. Then there are impressions on clay tablets, that they are known as ceilings. And then sometimes you also come across graffitis, which are actually painted on pottery, as you can actually see it in here. And also graffitis, which are actually kind of inscribed on potteries. So obviously, the Harappans were certainly, literate, and they were writing. One does not know which language did they actually which in fact was the language the Harappans actually used. I would believe that the Harappans probably in different regions did actually spoke different languages. Today the region which originally occupied the Indus civilization, you do actually come across more than 3 or 4 different languages being actually spoken today. Right, you have Gujarati, you have Rajasthani, you have Hindi, you have Sindhi, you have Punjabi, etc., which are actually being spoken in addition to many other languages, are actually being spoken in that region. So I would imagine that the situation would not have been very different from what we see today. There have been many different languages spoken by the people, but the script probably would have been, the script was actually used to kind of describe in different languages, in fact. What we know is that the script was actually written from generally from right to left, and occasionally from left to right as well. But earlier it was thought that there is no developmental features in the script, which has been actually found to be not true. You do actually come across very clear development in internal evolution, started from the early Harappan, the early part of the early Harappan, that is the Ravi phase, to Cottesian phase, to the urban phase. And then, those developmental features can actually be seen if you actually look at in the script belong to the Ravi phase or the Cottesian phase and the Harappan phase. You do actually come across this the different, as I said, different claims of it being actually deciphered. You do come across Harappan inscriptions or Harappan seals from seals and seal impressions in Mesopotamia. Probably that is the region probably one would actually expect to come across some bilingual kind of inscriptions. It's probably very difficult to imagine that in the domain of Indus civilization there would be a bilingual inscription where the Mesopotamians and the Indus people actually kind of interact and communicated. Most probably that is where you have better potential of coming across a bilingual inscription. Or I suppose the study of the Indus style ceilings, etc., which are found from these interactive zones, probably would help to understand the Indus language, in the script better. That is what one actually kind of imagines. Unless and until we actually come across a bilingual script, it would be very difficult to imagine that the script will eventually be read. But at the same time, there are a lot of researchers actually kind of trying to understand different aspects of the script, so that one day one would imagine they would certainly be successful in reading the Indus script. Now, coming to the Indus, the Harappan contact with the Indus, with the outside world, Harappan overseas contact, we do actually come across Harappan materials in Mesopotamia, especially many of these etched carnelian beads, long carnelian, as well as etched carnelian beads. A seal has also been actually found. Harappan seal and seal impressions have actually been found from Mesopotamia. Similarly, there are the Harappan potteries have been actually found from several sites in the Omanese Peninsula here, which includes the black slips jar, which is actually used for the overseas transportation of goods, by ships or boats, which are actually been found several sites in here, which clearly indicate that there is a constant interaction between the people of Indus civilization with the people contemporary civilizations or contemporary sites in Meccan, that is Oman, or in Bahrain, that is Dilmun, or the Mesopotamian region. Coming to the end of almost the end of my talk, this is about how exactly did the Harappans kind of come to an end, the decline of Indus civilization. There were very many different theories which has been actually kind of proposed by scholars, right from the discovery of Indus civilization, many of them has been actually kind of discarded and discredited. But one of the theories which has been actually kind of proposed on the basis of scientific analysis these days, in fact, is the climate change. There is quite good sets of evidence which we have. What is generally described the Magellan event, that actually happened somewhere around 4.2 kilo years back. That is 2200 BC. There appears to be an adverse climatic change that hit the entire subcontinent, which actually, not only the subcontinent, but actually stretches from the eastern part of Europe and covering the entire subcontinent. So we have evidence from the Gulf of Oman. You have the Arabian Sea. You have from the Meghallian caves, and also from Haryana. In all these places actually shows around 4.2 kilo year, that is around 2200 BC. There was a severe aridity event that is recorded in the sedimentary archives. But how severe was the effect of this, adverse climatic change to the Harappans, which we actually do not know. This needs actually further investigation, and the people argue that this would have been one of the reasons for the decline of Indus civilization. What in fact are the actual archaeological evidence against this, the claim of, what we call the adverse climatic change in somewhere around 2200 BC or 4.2 kilo years now. So this 4.2 kilo event coincides with actually the peak of Indus civilization, somewhere around, Indus civilization actually started peaking somewhere around 2200 or 2300, around 2200 BC. We do not actually come across a decline immediately happening somewhere around 4.2 kilo years or 2200 BC. What we actually come across in the archaeological record is that somewhere around 2100 BC, there was a decline in the material culture, which is reflected in most of the sites of the Indus civilization. Probably the stagnation and weakening of economic base have actually happened because of the climatic event actually happened somewhere around 2200 BC, and its effect must have actually felt a few years later, maybe 500 years, 50 years, or 100 years later. Now, what is also important is that there is no evidence of a sudden decline. The decline appears to be slow and steady from, let's say, from 2100 onwards. What one can actually see is that many of those drains were not, many of those very well kept Harappan resources were actually becoming less and less important for the city dwellers, where many of the drains were actually became unusable. The settlements actually getting accumulated with the waste material, which was actually dumped at different parts of the settlement, etc., indicating an economic degradation that was actually set in somewhere around 2100 BC, but it actually continues for another 300 years, and then what actually happened, in fact, is that around 1900 BC, the urban features almost completely started disappearing. So the Harappans could actually continue with the urban features for almost 300 years, even after the 4.2 kilo year old, Magellan event. So it certainly indicate that 4.2 kilo year event may have triggered a spiral of adverse climatic events hitting the economic activities of the Harappan adversely. That is certain, and that is why it is a slow process, and eventually they could not cope up with the environmental decline as well as the economic activities, and that is when the urban features actually completely started disappearing. What is also important is that if you look at the material culture, which you actually come across in the civilization, but from 2500 or 2600 BC onwards, there is no new technology being actually added in the Harappan economic production. It is the same bangles, same beads, same metal working activities were actually carried out from 2600 BC to 1900 BC. For almost 700 years, no new technology was actually added to enhance the economic activity, which essentially means that all technological, there is no technological innovation that was actually happening for almost 700 years. So they have actually kind of reached a saturation point in terms of technological know-how and the wealth creation. And by around 2300 BC or 2200 BC, they could pull on for another 300 years. But then with no new technology, they could probably not were not able to kind of continue anymore. That is when the urban way of life actually started disappearing. So it is the absence of technological innovation and the continuing and the resultant economic stagnation that actually resulted into the decline of Indus civilization. Probably the climatic change, the Magellan event or the adverse climatic change would have acted as a catalyst in the economic downturn of the Harappans somewhere around 2200 BC. Now, after 1900 BC, what we actually come across, the urban ethos were completely forgotten. You do not come across any one of those, the fortification wall, which was well maintained. They were all became unused. Many of the sites were actually abandoned. So it is a almost complete disappearance of the urban ethos, not only in the structural activities, but also in the other walks and ways of life. And what emerges, in fact, is the local traditions, which were dormant. When the urban economy was actually flourishing, the local traditions were actually dormant, and they actually resurfaces once this urban ethos actually disappear. So you do actually come across regional traits actually kind of started appearing once again in different parts of the Harappan cultural domain. In the northern part, northern part, which includes the northern part of Punjab, north and eastern part of Punjab, and Gagar Saraswati system, you have either cemetery H or Bara assemblages. These are local or the regional cultural traits. And in the Middle Indus, that is Mohenjo-daro and adjoining regions, the kind of local tradition that emerged after the decline of Indus urban phase is the Jukar assemblage, known as Jukar assemblage. Whereas in Gujarat, what is generally known as marked by the lustrous redware and Pur second, C, and third. So you have a different set of ceramic assemblages which actually mark this the post-urban phase of Indus civilization in all these places. So the earlier, the much esteemed urban ethos of the Indus civilization was completely forgotten, unaffordable, and that became oblivious. And the Harappans actually kind of ticked on up to almost 1300 BC with with the changed cultural traditions. And after 1300 BC, it completely disappeared from the scene. We do not actually see identifiable features of Indus civilization after 1300 BC. That, in fact, is probably the end of the Indus tradition in the subcontinent. Thank you very much for your patience. I suppose I took too much time to finish off the talk. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Ajithprasad.
Yeah.
There are a lot of things are completely new to me. I mean, let me be absolutely honest. I'm
Yeah.
not anyway scholar. I do read a little bit, but there's just so much to unpack here. I don't know how we are going to make sense of so much of what you have said. But largely, what I can see is that we have the next 5 days another 10 more lectures and
Yeah.
more. Some of them, I suppose, are going to go further deep into some of the subjects that you touched upon briefly,
Yeah.
right? Food, agriculture, and livestock. I think there is going to be a separate talk on food.
By Jennifer Bates. Yeah,
Yeah.
she's going to talk. I'm looking
There
forward to
is,
it as well.
yeah, there's this craft and material culture. There is so much you touched upon.
That Prabhakar will touch on.
Yeah, that also some industry and manufacturing we have. Weaving and textile, that was really interesting. The way we could see some of the impressions that indicate it's exactly like what we have today in terms of the loose jute weaving, the sacks that we use for
Right.
carrying
Yeah.
grains. It's exactly like that.
Yeah.
Burial, in terms of the chatter in the YouTube channel, there's so much of questions about burial.
Mhm.
And writing, is perennial, questions raised about us. Even Dr. Bisht was talking about somebody saying I can read a chaste early Tamil, and somebody saying I can read completely Sanskrit, and we don't know what we can actually say. But the one interesting point, sir, you made was that they were probably speaking multiple languages and there is one common script, and that's not a new idea. If you look at our Brahmi, that's how across the country Tamil was written in it. Most of the Prakrits, the Sanskrit, everything was written but single script.
Yes, that is very true.
And so much also in Sumerian regions, this script, the cuneiform script remained, but there were multiple languages. So that's an interesting thought process. That is fairly new to me, and the regional variations where you were singling out. Maybe you can just touch upon it for a minute, sir. That somehow the Gujarat region, which you were calling it a Sorat Harappan, different from the classical Harappan.
Yeah.
Is it that only the Sorat Harappan is such a distinct one, whereas everybody else, you can sort of even see some kind of a classical Harappan that covers everything else? Is that even possible? Something like that?
If I understood your question correctly, that how exactly one see this, the regional traits.
Yeah, only one region alone being distinct, because regional there must be variation almost everywhere.
Right. Now, the interesting thing is that, what you need to actually understand is that Saurashtra, Gujarat actually being the southern frontier, quite far away from the Indus, it's not constantly in touch with the Indus Valley proper. That is maybe one of the reasons the difference between the two are quite easily perceptible. I am pretty sure that if you actually examine in the Gagar Saraswati system, you will be actually able to kind of figure out there are regional traits which have been actually overlooked by our researchers' enthusiasm to see the things which are easily visible, which is easily identifiable as Harappan. Now, but the difference which you come across in the Surat Harappan actually is rooted in the cuisine variation, the kind of diet the Harappan, the people in Gujarat had. Both in the Gagar Saraswati system as well as in the Indus Valley, the major crops essentially wheat and barley and associated pulses. Whereas in Gujarat, that was not actually possible, because of the environmental constraints. So you need to actually depend upon what is actually possibly cultivated, what you can actually possibly cultivate in Gujarat. These were millets. And we actually have evidence of millet being exploited, locally available millet being exploited, their history going back to 3600 BC by the early Harappan communities. So, and that is the reason you actually come across variation in the pots and pans, which we actually see there, because millets, the cuisines which you make out of millets certainly need different sets of vessels, like the bowls, like the porridge, etc. That is the reason you come across the differences. So which actually helps us to kind of identify why this variation. So then we actually see that there is the root cause for it. That is essentially because the cuisines were certainly different. Tomorrow, Jennifer Bates will be actually talking about, you do actually come across wheat and barley as well. Her position is that wheat and barley were essentially used on special occasions, like when you have a festival or when you have some kind of ceremony happening. So they will be cooked separate, for that occasion and served. Whereas
Also, the rituals and rituals.
you can think of any different
Right.
kinds of occasion in which they actually played a very important role.
Right. Now, in this connection, there's a question from Manuel Joseph.
Mm.
The earlier scholars like Saraswat denied rice, or at most accepting wild rice. But now many sites have revealed rice. Any comments on that specifically?
Yeah, the rice question is actually an interesting one. Rice has actually been reported from Kunal. And going back to, I suppose, the end of the early Harappan onwards, and rice impression on pottery has been actually found from Lothal as well. These are the sites where you have actually rice. The status of whether it is actually domesticated one or the wild one has been actually kind of debated by the archaeobotanists, but most people actually would argue that it probably would have been actually domesticated. But there is also another little catch on this, primarily because the rice actually started playing an important role in our economic production or economic growth only when they became high yielding variety. It has been actually argued that the early rice were not high yielding ones. High yielding, because the farmers did not actually kind of automatically opted for it. Once it actually became, because of some mutation that actually happened with the different varieties of rice, once it actually became high yielding, it actually kind of adopted by people of different population, different parts of our country. So we do actually come across exploitation of wild rice going back to the beginning of the Holocene in the central Ganga basin. But then whether it was a high yielding variety or a low yielding variety, one does not really know. That is an aspect which needs much more further investigation.
Right. I suppose you really have to, if you can grab its DNA, you will have to only through that process you can look at it. And I happened to visit the Harappan Site Museum just back, and there was a jar of completely charred wheat. The wheat looked exactly like the wheat that you get today. In terms of its look and feel, there's absolutely no difference to what you cultivate today and what you sell in the market here, right? I don't know. I mean, given that it has become completely carbon, there's nothing you can probably pick from that. But how would you, in such a situation, figure out what kind of a variety it is, whether it has transformed? How would you even make sense of it?
The thing is that archaeobotany essentially depend upon morphological features of the rice to identify which variety is it, which species is it, which subspecies is it, because every species, subspecies do have certain identifiable features in their cell structure and the patterning of cell structure. That is what they actually kind of try to identify. Even if they are carbonized, that patterns and features actually remains. So if that actually kind of have got preserved in the specimen which you are looking at, they will be in a position to say which variety of rice it is, whether it is domesticated one, whether it's a wild one, or in that which species it is, etc., etc. That is not an issue. Yeah, but there are many different kinds of or species of wheat and rice, which is actually kind of domesticated and cultivated.
Okay. There are a few questions. There's one from Well, there's quite a few questions on the grain side, but I will drop them. There's a question on the productivity related. There are a couple of questions. Right?
Mhm.
Industrial production. So MV Bhaskar has a question.
Hmm.
Production involves creation, reproduction, and rapid reproduction.
Hmm.
I think creation, production, and rapid reproduction. What do we know about Indus technologies that enabled rapid reproduction? But that is outside of seals and impressions. But first question itself is, do we really require rapid reproduction or moderate
Rapid reproduction of what exactly is
whatever you prototype? So let us say it's bead.
uh-huh.
Originally, the first few beads that you take whatever time it takes. But
Mhm.
once you have mastered that, the modern industrial practice is that you must have some mechanism by which you produce hundreds and thousands and tens of thousands and so on, because you have a large market kind of a
Right,
thing.
right,
Is it
right.
something very similar? I'm assuming that,
Yeah.
and sort of rephrasing that question for you.
Yeah, it's fine. I suppose strategies they use for production depends upon the demand, the market, and the demand. You must have actually seen the slide which I have shown where you have stockpiles of raw materials. Now it was actually
Right.
found.
There were pots where there was a which could be considered as storage.
Yeah. So they were actually kind of storing them. They were not actually producing them en masse. They actually control the production so that they can actually increase the value of the value of the product if it's rare in the market, and it actually kind of enhances the value of the products. So it certainly indicates that all these market forces, all these sentiments were actually playing. What we actually see today must have been certainly played in the production of craft items. It is the market force essentially dictates. If you produce too much, there are no consumers, then what happens is the value automatically goes down. So if you actually produce them in limited numbers, like it's market value, it's brand value, as you would say, it goes up. So that is why you do come across not all. That is one of the reasons you actually come across many of these production of craft items were actually kind of protected by this. The workshops are actually found in the fortified areas. Yes, within the fortification, which actually indicated that there certainly was some amount of control the people actually exercised on the production itself. The how it is being produced, how many are actually produced, how many need to be produced. All this must have been actually played an important role in the eventual production of different craft items.
Well, I know Bhaskar was clarifying his question.
Sorry, Badri Varman. Dr. Prasad, can you stop sharing your screen so that we can see both you and Badri on video?
I can stop sharing the screen. Okay, wait a minute. Do I stop? I can just get out of it now.
Oh, no, there's a stop share. Yeah. Now,
Yeah.
Badri, can we see you also, Badri, on video? Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Good.
Bhaskar's question was what he's clarifying is, we know a lot about tools, but do we know about the tool bench? As in, how the shop floor was organized and flow of work. Maybe it's a little too modern.
I know.
Maybe I will skip this, but I will connect it with another question that Gandhi Gopinath has asked. Other than the well-known exports of beads and textiles, even textiles, I don't know whether we have strong evidence. Beads, yes.
Beads, yes. Yeah.
Exports of timber to Mesopotamia.
Yeah. There are actually textual references about many of these things in the Mesopotamian, inscriptions. You have, that is how we actually know which are all the products which are actually gone, including timber. Been mentioned, some of the birds being mentioned, etc. Beads and other things, you can actually see them. They are actually found.
You can see because there is a physical evidence.
Yeah. Exactly.
Many of the other things you don't have.
Yeah. They're talking about the ship being actually kind of harbored in the all those things are actually mentioned in the Mesopotamian inscription. So we know that there were ships coming from Meluha. So although we haven't actually come across any real ship of course, the drawings or the engravings of the ship has been found from some of the seals and ceilings. Yeah.
Right. So you showed a lot of bangles, particularly the shells cut, and also various other byproducts or products coming out of it.
Yeah.
One question is, these bangles, one of the questions is, did men wear bangles too, or it's only women?
Don't go by today's what we do. I suppose there is no restriction for men wearing bangles. Frankly speaking, one does not really know. Who are all the people who actually wore the bangles? Probably both men and women must have actually wore the bangles. Or probably only women wear the bangles. So one does not really know. It's very difficult to answer the question.
I think one possible way one could have found out is the average size, assuming that mostly people are all of the same size. The women are all of one particular size, and the men the other size. Maybe some statistical analysis of the diameter of
Probably. Yeah, one can actually kind of inquire on that line to see is there any particular pattern that emerges from today, and they apply that into the Harappan context and see if there is any information one can actually gain from that. It's a nice way of looking at it. Yes.
There's another question from Gandhi Gopinath.
Mhm.
We saw a recent excavation in Bijnor.
Mhm.
There was an entire settlement of metalworking. Is this a precursor to a similar settlement in the Sintashta Arakaim complex?
The thing is that there are very little actual evidence of metalworking came up from most of the Harappan excavations. What we actually come across, in fact, is finished products of metal. And if you're lucky, you sometimes come across some fragments of a crucible that must have been actually used for melting the metal, not for smelting the metal. Smelting essentially means that you need a kiln, a smelting kiln, and all those kind of paraphernalia, which is actually not found in any one of the sites near the Aravalli or even in the Suleiman ranges in Pakistan. But at the same time, when you actually come to, for example, in the production of zinc metal, which was actually quite extensively practiced in the Aravalli, in the foothills of the Aravalli ranges, you actually come across the debris of that production actually heaped up, actually forming a artificial hillock. You will imagine that this is like a natural hill, but these are actually the waste products have been actually piled up. And then, and this production of zinc actually started from the beginning of the modern era onwards, and it actually became very, very popular up to 10th century AD or so. And then what actually you come across is that such extensive production of zinc, and then that actually leaving behind the very easily identifiable, waste dumps. And imagining such a situation in a smaller scale, at least in the sites which are actually located in the Aravallis and other places, we haven't actually come across any one of the Harappan site actually producing those kind of evidence for the metal working. The kind of evidence which we have is very, very, very little.
But what of the various bronze items?
We do have, not that we have large number of bronze items. We do have, bronze knives, bronze.
So instead of a large smelter, it's all like homemade in whatever ceramic vessels they had, almost like a mini micro workshop.
No, I think metal smelting actually needs a temperature going up to almost 1100 degrees centigrade. That is not easily achievable in a household condition. You need the real experts, those who can actually manage the extraction, smelting of the ore to extract metal. Melting is easy once you get the ingots. Then you can.
Oh, okay. I understand what you are saying. So it is not that they were taking the ore and converting it. Most likely they procured the material from elsewhere, in which case they really didn't need smelters, etc. But they could actually get copper and zinc processed perhaps by nearby cultures or faraway cultures even. And then
Zinc was never actually used in the Harappan context. I'm talking about zinc in terms of to understand what kind of material remains are left behind when you actually use an extensive metal extraction process happening. Same thing would have been actually kind of expected in the case of copper smelting. That is what which we did not come across any of the copper smelting furnaces. What we come across is only the containers which must have been actually used for melting copper.
Was there any sign of mining anyway? First of all, you need to mine before you move on to smelting.
There are copper mines which are actually found in the Aravalli Hills and other places, even in Oman. Small. But then whether they act in the Aravallis, whether they actually belong to the Harappans or not, we do not know. Copper extraction of copper. But in the Omanese side, we do actually know it actually goes to the Chalcolithic period, and then you do actually come across furnaces, evidence of furnaces of copper smelting, not melting, smelting. Yeah.
Interesting. So there's another.
Jeevan Karegwal, Professor Jeevan Karegwal is actually going to talk about the Harappan metallurgy in this.
Right.
So you can actually kind of get it clarified.
No, your talk, Dr. Ajithprasad, gives us a huge. It's like a literature review of all the work that has happened.
That is what you are asked me to do. So I thought I will actually get it.
No, absolutely, so that
very comprehensive.
We know what all to look for, right? So that way it is fantastic. Really makes us
very comprehensive.
Understand many things. There is a question from Lajwanti Shahani. Sumerian civilization ended with wars, even in the Persian Gulf, and there is literary evidence of an attack on Marhashi from the Balochistan area, which made the Meluhans bring their trade to Sumer. Comments on this, please. What is
the comment I can actually make, which is certainly true that there were conflicts between the stakeholders when they were actually kind of trying to occupy spaces of where you have economic interests are actually involved. That leads into conflicts.
But did that lead to the Indus Harappan people restrict their trade? Because if there are pirate attacks, like even now that happens, unless you have even bigger navy force, you simply stop the trade and try out different markets. But is there anything that we can even glean from? Because we don't have written records.
Exactly. We certainly do not know what was actually going on unless and until we have some evidence about it. Forget about the written records. Obviously, that's the best. Even other set of evidence, one can actually kind of understand what in fact was actually going on in terms of trade transactions. So what we actually have is you do come across these items here and there, and then they actually come to an end somewhere around 2100 BC, 2000 BC. It comes to an end. The trade actually comes to an end around what you call the overseas trade comes to an end around 2100 to 2000 BC. I mean, if at all, the volume of trade actually substantially come down. And then by around the 1900 BC completely stops. That's all we actually can read from the material evidence, what we have. There are,
No, please go ahead.
No, had there been any kind of literary reference about what was actually going on, it would have been quite helpful. That unfortunately, we do not have.
Unfortunately, even in case of much later, you're talking about in the 500 BC, 600 BC period, or even later, at least one culture like for example, the Greeks were documenting the Persian and Egyptian and others, so that you have, even if it is a little exaggerated or
Distorted.
you have some record. Here, unfortunately, in that 2500 BCE to 2000 BCE, 2500 BCE, we have no written records found anywhere. Even the fragments that we have from Sumer isn't that detailed enough for us to make any sense of. It's not a history writing. It's more like
it's actually
account keeping.
accidental reference about it was not actually done with the intention of recording the events. It was actually accidentally recorded. That's how we know that this actually had happened, and how exactly that happened, nothing in much detail. That in fact is the limitations and restrictions of those evidence.
And it's quite amazing that even with that restriction, you're able to gain so much of knowledge about whatever you have presented today. It's quite amazing that we can make such an amazing solid scientific work combined with guesswork to reconstruct about what happened 4,500 years. Absolutely amazing.
It's more than guesswork. It's a hypothetical positions one actually takes based on certain assumptions, and then we actually try to see those assumptions are actually true or false. And if they are found to be true, then you actually see that this is probably the way it actually happened, and somebody else come up with another set of evidence, and then we see that it does not fit into what we have actually thought of, and then we actually kind of see what are the new assumptions you need to actually understand the new facets of evidence which we have. This is how we actually kind of make informations which is actually intelligible to us, our understanding.
Right. Wonderful. Sir, we have taken a lot of your time. It's now almost 9:30. Thank you for a wonderful
Thank you. Thanks for your patience. I suppose it is
for us.
First of all, it was delayed, and then it was too long.
Thank you so much, Dr. Prasad. That was an extremely engrossing and exhaustive lecture. And I think we need a lot of time to think about all the things that you spoke today, and then maybe follow it up with the subsequent speakers. Thank you so much. Thank you.
Thank you and good night.
And on behalf of Tamil Heritage Trust, for all our listeners, we have 5 more days of lecture. And Gauri, you have a presentation which shows what tomorrow's lecture is going to be?
Just 1 minute. Tomorrow we have 2 important lectures lined up. Dr. B. N. Prabhakar will be talking about Harappan crafts and their role in the long distance. And we have Harappan, 1 minute, I think I can see it. And we have Dr. Dennis Frenis to talk about Harappan trade with Central and Western Asia, early global marketing strategy. I hope to see all of you there tomorrow. And for all those who missed the lecture today, either fully or in part, you can catch up in our YouTube video. It will be a single video of day 1 where both the lectures will be combined. Thank you so much. With that, I think we'll call it a day. Good night.
Thank you. And
it was an exhaustive day 1, and we hope for similar exhaustive 5 more days. Thank you.
Thank you.